Blah 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 blah.
Hello everybody and welcome to I'll Tell You What TV for an F1 podcast talking about the German Grand Prix. This week though, Steve is on holiday. He's fucked off to Spain. I think he's gone there to cool down a bit because it's probably hotter here than it is there. So in his place we have the voice of Nigel Bolt, the voice of the now deceased Justin Leathers, a friend of James's, although maybe not for long after tonight, Paul, who we have just found out doesn't know too much about Formula One, and he's watching a highlights reel, and he's just said, literally just said these words: "Oh no, the Ferrari's gone into the barrier." No, not Ferrari, the Shell has gone into the barrier.
That's the name of the driver, Michelle.
Michelle. Oh, so yeah, this could be an interesting one this evening. Anyway, James, welcome. Paul, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. So, not much of an F1 fan, then I gather.
I mean, well, no, not really. I've never watched it up until meeting James, to be honest. So yeah, James has sort of showed me a few bits. I did, like I say, I did the Nigel Bolt voice on his commentary.
I've shown you, Paul. I've shown you a few bits, and I've shown you some Formula One.
Yeah.
Yeah, your pits were amazing.
So tonight could be interesting then, but I am also interested to get the thoughts of someone that's not much of an F1 fan. But what I will say is, before we sort of get into the conversations too much, obviously on I'll Tell You What TV, we are primarily an F1 podcast. We do quite often talk about other stuff as well, but we do also take the thoughts of our listeners seriously. So for example, I know Lucas Banco commented on our last week's video saying, "You guys just talked about video games or podcast. Shorten the podcast and focus on F1, which is what people are tuning in for. Promoting your racing games is cool and all, but I tuned out halfway through because it was obvious you guys weren't going to go back to F1 discussions." Well, Lucas, you know what? You're not wrong. What I will say though is, I think both me, Steve, and James would all agree that last week's podcast was probably the shittest one we've ever done. And we wouldn't disagree with that. I mean, I had my own things going on that day. To be honest, I probably shouldn't have even done the show. Steve should have watched a movie, which with the podcast was going to be about a movie. That didn't happen. James, he'd only just woken up from a nap, so none of us were really with it that day. And I think we would all agree that it wasn't our best of podcasts. We all found it a difficult show to do. It's very different though when we have a race to talk about, like the Grand Prix that's happened this weekend, and then we have other stuff that we can fall back on. The last thing I will say about it is, I mean, us guys did talk about it, and Steve came up with an idea which we're actually going to implement next week. And it's kind of derived from the comments from Lucas. So we do take people's comments quite seriously, apart from when it's Dave the Harp talking about his love life, then we just don't listen to that. So anyway, we'll get talking about the Grand Prix. So Paul, tell us what you know.
I know that I've just watched 5-minute highlight video. There was
Shell crashed.
Shell crashed into the barrier. Probably taking his rival DHL out, I don't know. And the pink car went for a bit of a ride on the grass. It probably thought it was some sort of Land Rover or something for a second. Who was it who did the pirouette?
That was Charles Leclerc.
Charles Leclerc. Very good ballet name, really, so that's why he probably did the pirouette.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah, that's about it, really. Who won?
Who won? Well,
I don't know. What's that far?
Well, the thing is, okay. Well, the thing is, right, Paul. You're not much of an F1 fan. Don't really watch F1. Is F1 the kind of thing that when you hear people talk about it, sometimes you go, "Oh, fucking hell, what is the point of that?" Like, it's a boring thing.
Be honest, Paul. Don't be polite.
Not as bad as football. Not as much
Jesus
as football.
Christ! Don't do a football podcast then.
No. No, not really. I suppose the more I talk to James, my next door neighbour, Tom, he's well into his F1. And the more I see sort of talking to these guys, I'm not disinterested by any means. I just need to be more educated, shall we say.
Okay. In that case then, as you get educated more, I mean, okay, you've just watched a short highlights video there, and it's clear from watching those highlights, it's not very I'm going to create a word now, explainative. It doesn't explain much. That's a proper new word, that is.
Informative.
Informative, yeah, as to who is who and what is what. For you as someone that's perhaps quite new to Formula 1, would you want it to be a very simple viewing experience then? So you could basically turn it on and go, oh, okay, the guy in the pink car, his name is this, and that's all I really need to know.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, that's nail on the head, really, because if I watch it, like we're at work and I'll watch highlights and James will show me clips and he will be saying, so this is so-and-so, this is Hulkenberg, this is Vettel, you know, and he'll sort of point them out to me. But if I was just to switch over on the telly and start viewing, I mean, I might pick it up eventually and sort of get to grips with it, who's who. But yeah, I would say it'd be nice if it just had a sort of maybe, I don't know. I mean, is it a stupid question to ask if they could colour code it? I don't know. Is that a silly question?
Well, the thing is, you say that. To be honest, one of the things that they have been doing in Formula 1, more so this year, is to basically prepare what you see on the screen when you're watching a race as if you've never seen it before. So parts of it are colour coded. The timing tower, which is the list of names on the left hand side, bits of it are colour coded. So if there's a red bit next to the name, they're in a Ferrari, the shell car as you called it, silver Mercedes. So it is colour coded a bit, but they've also added extra things. So now there is a Ferrari logo, a Mercedes logo, a Force India logo. So they have made it more connectable, so to speak.
User friendly.
Yeah, and also one of the things that they've really added this year is if you're looking at say 4 or 5 cars battling on the timing tower on the left hand side, they will actually sort of group a section and go, you're watching these 4 guys and their names are. So you can go, all right, so that first car, that's Lewis Hamilton, that second car is Valtteri Bottas, and it will show their picture as well. So you can actually get to see what car they're in, the name, and what they look like, and it is made much more for a newer viewer. So if you would start watching Formula 1 now, it would be a lot easier for you to begin to follow it until people started talking about all the different tyre types, the engines, the hybrid power units and the DRSs and all the technical stuff. Is that something that would put you off as a new viewer?
No, I think actually as a new viewer I'd be interested to learn more about those things if they went, you know, it would take time obviously to get used to, like say, the technical terminology and whatnot. But what I was going to say, the other thing I was just thinking about then was that was, basically, so I just watched a sort of 5-minute highlight video that James sent me of the German Grand Prix. But I had to watch it. I watched it without sound because I was sort of listening to you guys at the same time. And to see you guys would watch it and you guys would pick up on things like, wow, that was a great, you know, he's in the driving line. See, I'm saying these things that James says. I'm sort of learning the terminology off him slowly. So I like the race line, the car's width, and etc. You know, you would watch a race and you would go, wow, you know, and you'd be sort of whoa and cheering along, and I'd be watching it going, it just looks like cars driving to me. Do you know what I mean? And he's just overtaking him. I'm guessing that's a good thing, but you know what I mean. You'd be sort of really in there with the what you would think is a fantastic race, for example. And bear in mind, I have never, apart from what James has sent me, never watched it. So what would look like a fantastic race to you would, to me, look like cars going round a track. Yeah. Same as watching anything else, I guess. But
I kind of have a view that Paul's idea of an amazing overtake is tons of tyre smoke, shoving it up the inside, a bit of bumping, and then, you know what I mean? I think that's
physical.
Yeah. Whereas with F1, you touch a car now, you've either got a puncture or you lost a bit of downforce, and you're going to go slow.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
what? Maybe we'll have to properly try and educate Paul then. Get him to watch some old F1 highlights and stuff like that.
I'll make a post. I'll make a poster with Michael Caine, and instead of educating Rita, it'll be educating Paul.
Just put my head over like Judi Dench's. Not Judi Dench. What's her name?
Julie Walters.
Julie Walters.
Slight difference, Judi Dench and Judy Walters, but there we go. But I mean, this is the thing with motorsport. It's a little bit like with football. I mean, you're not a big fan of football, and I can understand that. Some people think, oh, it's just pretty blokes running around in shorts, falling over all the time. Compare that to rugby; it's a completely different sport. And in motorsport, Formula One, in a way, is kind of like the football side, where you can't touch each other. But there are forms of motorsport where you can get a bit more physical, and it brings a different level of entertainment. But I can understand that. I mean, I know, for example, me and James may have slightly different views of how this weekend's Grand Prix went, whether it was a good one, a bad one, or what, and that could be very different to what you might think had you watched the whole of the race. So what I'm interested to know now, in short, James, is whether you thought that the Hockenheim Grand Prix was good, bad, ugly. Which way you think which way is your mind going on that one? And this is where James has fucked off somewhere.
I'm here. Sorry.
See, we talked about this before.
To go get some fans.
Yeah. Okay.
I thought it were a good one. Bit of a slow build up, and I was like praying for rain, and then rain turned up, and I was like, yeah, here we go. And it was perfect 'cause it only rained in one corner, but it was quite heavy in one corner, and you kind of thought, oh, if that goes, if a gust of wind takes that cloud over the circuit, it's going to all kick off.
So was it an exciting race for you?
I'd say it were exciting when it started raining.
Okay.
So do you know when? So
all I'll say is Vicky was quite pissed off because I were whooping as Vettel crashed. I was like, yeah, woo! And Vicky were like shaking her head, going,
"You're a dickhead.
Shut the fuck up! I'm trying to watch Love Island." But it must have been alright, because it's the first time I've whooped this year watching F1. Normally I sit there just looking miserable.
Well, it is interesting, right? And I mean, I as always, I make notes. Not always, but since we're doing this podcast, I make notes while I'm watching the races. And you know what? Silverstone for me was a kind of an interesting race. It was more exciting than any other race we'd have had the rest of this season. This race was the first race this season where I'm trying to write notes and thinking, how can I write notes and look at the screen? Because I want to look at the screen. And I've not had that for the whole of this season. And it wasn't that I was being lazy and I wanted to watch TV. It was that I was wanting to watch what was happening on the telly. So for me it was quite an exciting race. But I've kind of managed to break it down into a couple of factors. Now, for someone like yourself, Paul, who has done a bit of commentary with James, some of the things that I'm going to say you may be able to perhaps relate to a little bit. And James will know a bit more about this because we've talked about it before. But one of the last notes I wrote, James, was Steve right that the European broadcasters at the location are better than those abroad? Because for me, the broadcasting coverage, where the cameras were pointing, were absolutely spot on this week.
Exactly. And normally you end up watching. I mean, the only criticism I'd have were near the end of the race when it kept showing Hamilton, Bottas, Raikkonen.
Yeah.
Even though they're spread out, you could look down the timing tower and you could see that a lot of cars were a lot closer.
Yeah.
And even on the slowing down lap, Croft were going oh, and there's a brilliant race going on right here, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't see that. I can just see Hamilton on his slow down lap.
Yeah, there was a battle between P7 to P12 was all really close. Grosjean overtook, I think it was 5 cars in the last 4 laps, to go from, I think it was 11th or 10th to where he finished 6th. So there was a lot going on down there. But, I mean, even on that, I actually did write down saying, you know, I could forgive that on this occasion, missing that action, because they'd got everything else spot on. Now, Paul, to bring Paul into this bit as well, obviously, I know if Lucas is listening, you might complain that I'm talking about James's Racing League, but one of the reasons that I'm doing that is because there are things that we would do while recording or live broadcasting racing events ourselves. There's things that you learn that as a viewer of Formula 1 or any sport that you want to see. So Paul, for you, how important is it, do you think, when watching a live event, that they actually catch the action live and don't go, oh, we're watching someone, as you put it, driving around the track, oh, now let's watch a replay of some action that happened a few minutes ago?
Ooh, that's a good one. I mean, the thing is, I think live TV in anything, whether it be sport or anything else, it's a funny beast, because you're broadcasting, you might have 100 cameras, but you might have one camera view showing live, and you just might miss that moment, so you might have to do a replay. But it would be nice, in an ideal world, yes, it would be nice if the cameras could catch the action live, so rather than just cut into the crowd or cut into a someone.
You can see James has been teaching you cut into the fucking crowd.
Yeah, cut into some bimbo in crowd going, ah! You're like, I don't want to watch you, I can watch you after the race.
yeah, I can pause you.
Yeah. But, I mean, you're right, though. You're right. I mean, live sport is unpredictable, and you can't always know where something is going to happen. But, James, if you remember, James, when earlier on this season, there was a race where Verstappen started quite far back, and I moaned like fuck that for the first 5-6 laps, you didn't see him on camera, but he gained about 10 places and you never saw it. And I said, surely somebody's got to sit in that office and go, he's going to overtake people, make sure somebody's watching him at all fucking times, and when he gets close, let's cut to him. It never happened. But this week, Hamilton starts 14th, and what happens? Every single overtake he does is caught live on TV.
Yeah.
Because somebody sat there going, let's watch him.
Somebody turned up who had a brain.
Yeah, you're right there.
What do we do? Oh, it's alright, here he comes. And then Mr. Common Sense turns up and goes, just put a fucking camera on Hamilton, something will happen.
Yeah. And the thing is, right to do so. Now, I said I broke this up into sort of a couple of sections, which I have. One is the level of broadcasting. I think the level of broadcasting this weekend in Silverstone has been considerably better than we've seen over the course of the whole season. Another one was the actual on-track action. There was actually quite a lot of action on track before it rained, and then even more so afterwards. However, there was a theme, and I don't know whether you caught this theme, James. Before it rained, there were overtakes, but where were all of the overtakes happening?
At the end of the long straight into the hairpin.
Into the hairpin. Pretty much every single overtake happened in one place on the track, and that was what they called turn 6, which is the hairpin. So although Hamilton was gaining places, all of his overtakes were into turn 6. Ricciardo was gaining places, all of his overtakes were into turn 6. So it did kind of give action, but at the same time, if you weren't sat at the track at turn 6, you've kind of wasted your money going to the circuit.
Yeah, that's what I found when I turned up at Melbourne, because I always go to Melbourne and I always think to myself, especially playing, well, when I used to play the game when it were good. I better not talk about games anyway. But when I used to play the F1 game and it were good, the final corner I always found to be the most challenging corner, because it's the one where you're like, I want to get the power down and I want to get on the long straight with as much power as possible, and sometimes you could go a bit too wide and maybe spin out or something like that. Went to the final corner in Australia and everybody was just like, just breezing past like it was no problem. Whereas I remember when it rained in 2010, that final corner were absolutely horrendous for drivers. I remember Massa like sliding sideways and all sorts of shit happening. But it's one of them races where when it rains, it gets a bit damp. When you've got cars that'll give you so much power, but yet they can't unleash that power, that's what makes it exciting. Because you're like, at any moment they can spin out because they've got too much power for this rain, especially when they're on slicks.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say is though, the crowd in Hockenheim this weekend was the biggest that Hockenheim has seen for a long time. And on Friday there were concerns about the lack of attendance on Friday, the practice sessions. But as happens sometimes, on the Friday not many people could make it to the track. Saturday was rammed and Sunday was rammed, and I actually saw a picture from the last Hockenheim Grand Prix and this Hockenheim Grand Prix, where at turn 1, just after turn 1 on the outside of the track where the stadium is, there was probably 5-6 sections of grandstand, which last time they were at Hockenheim had advertisement boards over all of the seats. This year, rammed. So
Yeah.
The level of attendance has been much greater at this Grand Prix, which I think is very good. But at the same time, if all of the action can only happen at one place on the circuit, that can be a little bit boring. So now turning this to Paul a little bit, as a noob, what would your thoughts be on a racetrack where people can only overtake you in one place?
No. I think even as a noob, not knowing, I might be talking as a shit here, but no, I think if you had a track where you could only overtake in one spot, I mean, it might be great for the crowd that are sat there who can watch it live, you know, who have paid for the ticket to get in. But I think I think it'd make it a lot. For me personally, it would make it a lot less exciting, because you wouldn't give a crap about what's happening anywhere else on the track. Yeah. Apart from maybe the odd crash or whatever, you wouldn't care. I mean, because you'd just be looking out for that one corner.
Exactly. I mean, this is the thing that got me when I was making my notes, was if you actually, I mean, the attendance, like I said, at Hockenheimring was fantastic. But effectively, what 99% of the crowd have done there is paid to go and see a Grand Prix, sat in a stand and watched the race on the TV. In the stadium.
Can I just quickly jump? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, go for it.
As I'll put something to you guys, both of you. My brother. So the three guys that I know that are really into the F1 is James, my next door neighbour, and my brother. Yeah. So my brother's been to watch a couple of F1 races live. You know, gone, paid his ticket fee and everything, and he says he would much. Bear in mind he's a big fan, he'd much rather watch it on TV, because just as you've said, he sat in his seat, it was baking heat. I can't remember where he was off the top of my head, to be honest, but it was baking heat, it was burning, and he says the car, if you were to just watch the track, the cars just whizzed past, and that was it. And then 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, it whizzed past, and you end up watching a big screen. Yeah. And I'm thinking, well, do you go for the experience? Is it sort of I don't know. What do you get?
Well, I think it's an interesting question. Now, unfortunately, I've never been to a live F1 race. I've been to the young driver test sessions and stuff like that. Now, my parents, they have been to Silverstone a few times. I mean, it's only in the last sort of 10 years that they're able to go, because it was quite expensive, and they'd make a weekend of it. So they'd go Friday and they'd be in a hotel, stay Saturday, Sunday. And the first year they absolutely loved it, the fact of going to Silverstone the whole weekend away. But they did say that watching the race was a bit boring, because all you could really do was watch it on the TV screen. They did say that they would prefer, like your brother did, much preferred to have stayed at home to watch the race. But as you also said, the experience of going and having been there, and I think they went there the last year that F1 cars were actually really noisy. So that experience was definitely worth going for. The last time they went was with the more modern cars, the quieter engines. The experience wasn't as good. They still enjoyed their weekend away and they made the most of it, but they still came back and said, yeah, I'd much rather watch the race on the TV, but going was an experience.
I'm not going to take you off on a tangent here, don't worry.
Sure.
But the only thing personally I can liken that to is I went to watch Lee Evans, the comedian, at the MEN Arena, and I was sat right at the back, and it was he was the size of an ant on the stage, and obviously he's got the speaker, you can hear him, but I was literally just sort of glancing down and then looking up at the big screen above him. But it's like you said about your family. The fact that I can say I've seen Lee Evans live, I've been there. Yeah. But really, deep down, I was thinking, this is a bit shit. I'd rather just get the DVD and just watch him close
You think you've seen Lee Evans live, you're not sure because you only saw him on the telly. It could have been anybody down on that stage.
Could have been any bugger on the stage. It could.
But you're not wrong. I mean, James, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I had a similar experience with Spice Girls.
What?
It's out there, James. It's live now.
No, I'm only joking. I did actually go see Spice Girls because my sister were like, I need to take somebody. Somebody needs to come with me.
And you were like, I'll go.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. There with your Union Jack dress on.
I bet you know all the dance moves as well.
Oh, definitely. Move it, shake it. Who do you think you are? I know that. But yeah, I've got to say, I've been to Silverstone Grand Prix in 2011, and I've been to Melbourne Grand Prix. It was experience to be at Silverstone. I much preferred Silverstone to Melbourne, but I went and just watched the telly. Really, it were like watching telly, and then you get two corners where you get to watch it with your own eyes.
Yeah.
And then, because I sat, in the new section at Silverstone at turn 2, 3, 4, that kind of little the slow bit. I picked the seats there because I thought, well, there might be a bit of action there. There were a lot of action on lap 1, and it were hit and miss. 90% of the race there were no, and then 10% of the time there was something good. But mainly I was watching telly. Over at Rose on big in lorry, big blow up telly.
I mean, it's something that got me thinking before I went for my nap today, which was you look at we talked a little bit about, or I've talked a little bit about the broadcasters in Silverstone, much better, at Hockenheim, much better, and if it's because they've got people who know more about motorsport and their job, the viewer gets a better experience. But not only that. Right, Silverstone is a proper racetrack. Hockenheim Ring, maybe not quite a proper racetrack anymore, but it's a proper racetrack. Melbourne is not a proper racetrack. Bahrain shouldn't be a proper racetrack. Baku, it's not a proper racetrack. Canada, not a proper racetrack. There's a lot of places that Formula One goes and races that are not proper racetracks. And that's probably what equates to a portion of the lack of action. Greatest portion comes from the cars, we know that. But another portion can come from the fact that you're racing on street circuits where it's not built for racing race cars.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I first proper started watching Formula 1, which were about 10 years ago, 2008, the idea of going to a street circuit was something quite special.
Yeah.
Now, half at Calendar's street circuits, and it's just like, well, it's going to be shit because there's no way to overtake. Well,
here's a question for you then: is Monaco less special now because of the other street circuits?
I'd probably say it's lost a bit of its
mystique.
Appeal. Yeah, because you're like, oh, well, I see kind of action, meaning no action. Yeah. But majority of the race, the only thing that's good about Monaco is it's so narrow, but then on the other hand, that even creates less overtaking.
Yeah. Go on, Paul. You were going to ask him something.
Sorry, James. I don't want. If I'm bringing up old ground here from a previous podcast, just cut me off.
That's all right.
I recall at work, James, you were talking Monaco, and it being not too exciting. You were on your iPad. You were sort of sketching up. You had the Monaco track on your iPad, and you were sketching extensions and whatever, and superimposing bits onto it, and making it your dream Monaco track. Have you covered it? Just shut me up. But is that something you can talk about?
We can talk about it. It's not a problem. We have covered it, but it's no problem talking about it again.
Because I remember the call you were putting. Sorry.
Right. No, he did. He basically extended part of the circuit at Monaco, and unfortunately, I haven't still got the picture. Otherwise, I would show it. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with bringing it up again because it's a valid point, and it's a little bit like, I mean, Hockenheim is kind of the same, in that if they altered a couple of the corners at Hockenheim, they could create more overtaking opportunities. Monaco is one where the overlay that James did was basically the track is exactly the same as it is now, except for where the final corner is. Instead of turning right and right, you'd turn left, go down a bit of a straight into a hairpin, back up another straight into a right-hander onto the start-finish. Creates a whole new section of track where there's a much more opportunity of overtaking. And that is something that I think Formula 1 may have to actually look at a number of tracks and go, let's say for example Monza, they've been looking at redesigning Monza for MotoGP. Now I can understand that a little bit, and if they want to adjust Monza to accommodate for MotoGP, fine, but don't adjust the track for MotoGP and then make Formula 1 race on that layout. It probably will not work. So what they need to do is go, right, how can we modify a track to make it more exciting racing? So whether that be getting rid of slower corners or getting rid of off-camber corners, which just make it difficult for people to drive around a corner. It's a little bit like, okay, if you're driving on normal roads, right, and you've got single carriageway in each direction, and you go, right, the speed limit down here is 100 miles an hour. It ain't going to make no difference because nobody can overtake. But if you suddenly put a dual carriageway in and then say you can go 100 miles an hour, now people can get past slower vehicles. So it's a little bit like you've got to adjust it in the right way to make it work, and that way that James thought about Monaco was pretty good. I mean, as a bit of a newbie to Formula 1, I'm going to keep winding you up with that as well. What would you want from a sporting spectacle like Formula 1? If we were to say to you, right, go and watch the full replay of the Hockenheim Grand Prix, or for example, this weekend is Hungary, what would you be wanting to see from a Formula 1 race?
You see, I'm going to sound like a real meathead here, and I'm just going to say crashes, a few couple of crashes. You know, I'm not saying set it up for crashes. I'm just saying just get stuck in, get in there. You know, get a bit of bumping, make it so you can nudge him a little bit.
Decapitation. I'm sure James said decapitation.
Yeah.
The things
I want death. No, I mean, but it's no, but one of the points I was going to raise earlier was if as a newbie, I can easily just hop on YouTube, and I never have ever watching a race in my life, and I can just type in F1's greatest moments or whatever, you know, and you can watch that, and it'll just be crashes and explosions and cars setting on fire and skidding and turning, you know. Do you know what I mean? And it's great to watch a 5-minute compilation video of all this happening. But you go in and watch a live race or watch, you know, and it's not like that 90% of the time. I'm guessing it's just a race. So I think maybe the problem lies there. I mean, I'm even me, not an F1 fan, would happily watch a compilation video of drivers bloody
fucking up.
Flipping. Go on, sorry.
That's saying fucking up.
Yeah, fucking up, you know, setting on fire and running out the car. And
the thing is, there's nothing wrong with that either. There's nothing wrong with that either, right? I'm a hardcore F1 fan. James is, Steve is. We still watch it for the crashes.
Yeah.
And that is, I mean, it is part of the appeal of it. I mean, we've always said we want to see crashes. We don't really want to see people get hurt. We never do. It's a horrible feeling when you see someone get hurt while racing. But we do like to see a good crash. And I get excited by them. I mean, it's like James was saying, he hasn't whooped watching Formula 1 in a long time, but he did when Vettel crashed. Now, Vettel's crash, or Shell's crash, wasn't the most spectacular. It wasn't the most outrageous. It's probably not going to feature on one of these YouTube reels like you mentioned. But, I mean, for a sort of non-F1 fan, they'd look at that and go, well, there's nothing special about that. But to the likes of James, who knows, it's what that crash means that is what gets James excited. He was leading the race. He was going to win the race. He fucked up, and not only that, he did it after Ferrari basically tried to not tell Kimi Raikkonen to move over and let let Vettel through. It was that. He's now winning the race. He's fucked up. He's going to lose his championship lead. There's so much more to it, and like you say, you won't get that from a highlight snippet. But there's nothing wrong with wanting to watch Formula 1 for the crashes, because we still watch it for that.
You don't watch boxing to watch them shake hands here. You want them to fuck each other up in a ring.
Exactly. Well, that's why Tyson Fury got absolutely slated after his last fight. He's been going on about how the Gypsy King is coming back and he's back and all this kind of shit. And apparently his last fight was an absolute fucking bore fest.
Well, exactly. I mean, you were saying about what it means. And he fucked up, and that it meant a lot to James and yourself and people who've kept up with it. And one of the other points that we're going to raise is being there from the beginning. If you're there from the start, if you're already into it and you're there from that race one, and you've kept along with points all the way, because I know obviously you gather points and whatever, lose points along the way. It sort of, you get on board with it. But if I was to just tune in now, sort of, I don't know where along the line they are, but is it going to mean as much to me coming in halfway through to you guys who've been there from the start? I don't know. It's a stupid thing to say.
No, it's not a stupid thing to say, because at the end of the day, new viewers have to come from somewhere. And it's very easy for new viewers to come along and, like I said, they don't have that connection. But let's say, for example, if you started watching Formula 1 now, you'd learn a little bit, and then if you carried on watching it, next season you'd go, oh, that was that guy I watched last year who won a few races. And that's where it then builds from. It's a little bit like someone saying, it's like James saying, oh, you know what, if you've never seen The Sopranos, you should watch it. Start watching it halfway through season 3. It ain't going to mean as much. It really isn't. But if you say watch a couple of episodes from season 3, you might go, okay, well, this is a bit, I don't know what's going on, but it don't seem too bad. I'll go and watch it from the start. It's a similar process. You then watch from the start, you learn who the people are and what they do, and you learn about the characteristics of everything, and it slowly, it can mean more to you. But like your comment about you want to see crashes, right? That kind of, it expands as well. You want to see crashes, but where do crashes come from? Crashes come from somebody fucking up or somebody creating action. So people trying to overtake each other, it working, it not working, and it's that battle of excitement that creates the possibility of crashes at times. So by wanting to see the crashes, it expands into other areas of the sport. The more you watch it, for example, like me and James will watch Formula 1, and so will Stephen. We'll look at that timing tower and the gap between two cars, and we'll watch that gap coming down, and in anticipation we're like, well, when he catches him up, this could get exciting, this could get interesting. Now to you wouldn't perhaps look at it in that same way. You wouldn't look at it and go, oh well, he's 2.5 seconds behind him, in another lap he might be only a second behind him, then it'll get interesting. That'll sort of go over your head until it's shown on the screen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was going to say I'm going to keep referring to people like sort of my neighbour, my brother James. You know, people who I'm surrounded by that are into this thing. And I'll sit out in the garden. My neighbour will be inside, with his door open because it's hot. He'll be watching the F1, and I can literally hear him going, "Don't fuck it up! Don't fuck it up! Oh, you fucking blah, 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 blah." And I can hear him, you know, shouting from inside, and it's lovely and it's great. But I mean, I was going to say, going off what you said, I suppose, like, I watch it and I just want fire.
Yeah.
But as I watch it more, like, you know, but you know, but as you watch it, just what you were saying, it's like watching a series, tuning in halfway through, you think, who are these characters? What are these? What's this all about?
Yeah.
The more you watch it, the little things become more meaningful.
Yeah.
You sort of hone it, you know, and the fuck ups become more, you know, more personal, and you know, it hits home a bit more. They
do. I mean, it's a little bit like. I mean, okay, I mentioned a little bit about Kimi Räikkönen and Sebastian Vettel, and James, you can sort of come in on this. Actually, you can as well, Paul, because it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on it. Team orders is something that is allowed in Formula One. So basically, the engineers or the team managers can say, right, he's faster than you, he's behind you, fuck off out of the way, let him through, or whatever the case may be. They can give their drivers orders. Now, Ferrari, I know you will have a thought on this, James. Ferrari picked Kimi Räikkönen early, basically put him onto a two-stop strategy. Later on in the race, Kimi Räikkönen is ahead of his teammate Sebastian Vettel. Vettel is moaning like a little girl that his tyres are hurting, being behind Kimi Räikkönen. Ferrari turn around to Kimi Räikkönen, and instead of just saying, Kimi, do us a favour, move out of the way, let Vettel through, they give him a 30-worded coded message where Kimi Räikkönen basically says, well, what do you want me to do? If you want me to move, just tell me. And James is fucked off again. What are you doing now, James?
I was waiting for Paul to react.
All right.
I thought Paul was going to go, what a little bitch.
Yeah.
No, he's aiming it at you, mate. This is all you.
Yeah, I'm aiming it at you.
Yeah, well, I was just sat there and I already knew what were going to come. And I thought it was so ironic that it were happening on exactly the same racetrack as when it last happened.
With Alonso and Massa.
Alonso and Massa. That were a bit more straight to the point. But I don't know. I just kind of sat there because I already knew what were going to happen. I was quite surprised if Raikkonen knows his time's up at Ferrari at the end of the season. I'm surprised he didn't just go fuck off.
Yeah, but I think I think that's why he said to him, "Well, if you want me to move over, just tell me." I think that was his way of saying fuck off. It's like, don't give me coded bullshit. If you want to tell me to move out of the way, fucking tell me. And then everybody knows that it's you that's told me to do it.
Yeah. But I think he handled it a lot better than what Massa did.
Yeah.
I think on that day back in 2010, just so that you understand, Paul, you probably won't know what we're on about. In 2010, something very similar happened at Ferrari. At the time, Fernando Alonso were the number one, and Felipe Massa were number two. And basically, the crux of it was Massa were in front of Alonso. Alonso wanted to beat him. Well, he wanted to win the race because that's what all Formula 1 drivers are like. And he starts bitching and moaning over the radio because he can't physically overtake himself. He has to bitch and moan over the radio to get the team to do it for him. And basically, in the most public way possible, Felipe Massa's team engineer said, "Understand this. Fernando is faster than you." Basically, coded word of move out of the way and let him through.
Yeah, because at that time team orders weren't allowed, so they gave a coded message which was, Felipe, Fernando is faster than you, which basically means the bosses want you to fucking move over and let him go. And it caused uproar. Now this is something I was saying about, a bit like with you, Paul, not knowing much about Formula 1. Mm-hmm. That's something that me and James know. So when this situation was occurring this weekend, where we could see Vettel catching up to Kimi Räikkönen, in my mind I was thinking, this is going to be Alonso Massa situation all over again. Now, for you as a viewer, that's not something that you would have. However, if the broadcasters did say, oh, this is a little reminiscent of Alonso and Massa from 2010, as a new viewer, you'd be like, well, what happened there then? I'll YouTube that.
Yep.
And then you can get the connection.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I was just going to say, yeah, because you would get that, and you would say, well, I'll go YouTube it, I'll Google it, whatever. But at the same time, I wouldn't want those. Did you say now they can speak quite openly about what they want them to do?
Yeah. So if they want them to,
yeah, they can just say move.
Yeah.
I was going to say, because okay, Cast 2010 then when it wasn't allowed. I kind of like that. I kind of like the fact that people would have to read between the lines, and it's a bit sneaky and a bit coded. I think that's I like that idea.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But...
as we'd say, a bit like a snake.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, a bit snaky. But I mean, it sounds weird, but I sort of like it. It's like an Easter egg in a film. You sort of got to pick it. You've got to pick it out and look for it. And as you get into it, you think, bloody hell, that's what you could watch that. You in 2010, you could have watched that and not had a clue. But 8 years later, you could watch it back and go, fucking hell, you know what an Easter egg. It's just
Well, it's a little bit like Multi 21. At the time, Multi 21 meant fuck all to me, and you'll have no idea what we're talking about, right?
Not a clue.
Exactly. But James and I, we now know exactly what Multi 21 is. And basically that was a coded message to the Red Bull drivers, who one was a number 1 driver and one was a number 2 driver, right? And basically Multi 21 means that when car number 2 is in front of car number 1, you hold position, you don't overtake each other. So the multi is the code 21, right? So car 2 is staying ahead of car 1. If it was the other way, it'd be Multi 12. Now that was something at the time I didn't know about until it came out later on that was the code that the drivers had been given. But in that situation, Mark Webber is given the code Multi 21. He's told he's safe in his position. His teammate's going to stay behind him. His teammate is given the same message and basically thinks, fuck that, overtakes the guy ahead and wins the race. Creates an argument in the driver's room afterwards where Mark Webber sat there giving it Multi 21, said Multi 21, and then there's all this, what's that all about then? And that was Sebastian Vettel was his teammate, and that was the guy who on this occasion was basically allowed to pass Kimi Räikkönen. So there's so much behind all of the stories that go on in Formula 1 that as a new viewer a little bit difficult to get your head around. But at the same time, as David Harp is saying on YouTube at the moment, didn't Vettel ignore the Order 1 race? And I'm thinking he did, James, didn't he? Vettel earlier this season was told to move over, let Kimi through, and he basically said he's not fast enough. If he wants to overtake me, he can pass me.
No, I think it may be that, but I also remember in 2014, in Sebastian's last year at Red Bull, Ricciardo were whipping his ass, making him look like shit. He just won 4 titles on bounce. Gets a new team. Mark Webber retires, his teammate, and a new teammate comes in, Danny Ricciardo, who's still at Red Bull now. And Ricciardo were making him look like a little bitch. And the team said to Vettel, Ricciardo's faster than you, so if you just let him through, that'd be great. And to tell a 4-time world champion that must have took some balls. But then Vettel comes back and goes, no.
Yeah.
So hang on, if how many times for Red Bull had they basically favoured Vettel 1,000,000 times over, and basically with strategy and bits and bats with the team, basically fucked over Mark Webber so many times to allow Vettel to win races.
Yeah.
And then the one time that he gets a new teammate, Danny Ricciardo, and the team ask him to do something he don't want to do, he goes, no. And it was just like, you little bitch.
Yeah, definitely. Now, the interesting thing about this as well, with this weekend's Grand Prix, is as soon as Vettel was catching Raikkonen, I could see that this was going to happen, right? But to be honest, given that they were on different tyre strategies, Kimi was on a 2-stop strategy, Vettel was on a 1-stop strategy, that decision of, right, let's swap the cars, was the right decision to make. On the flip side though, I don't mind it, but I'd rather see the car behind have to actually overtake. And that's where, Paul, you were saying like you like that sort of devious nature of the coded messages.
Yep.
One of the things back then was they didn't want teams just saying move over to their drivers, because it takes away a little bit of the action.
Yeah.
And for me, that's what it does as well. It's like, well, if you want to get past him, overtake him. If it was a Mercedes, he's not going to move out of the way for you. If it's in a different car, he's not going to move out of the way. You're going to have to go and overtake him. And unfortunately, you don't get that in Formula 1 at the moment. So in that situation, I could kind of see it coming. I didn't really have a problem with it because different strategies. We'll see what happens to Raikkonen later on. However, flip that on its head. Later on in the race, after the safety car came out, and the race was restarted, Lewis Hamilton is now leading the race on slightly older tyres than his teammate, and Valtteri Bottas, who I've got to say over the last 2 years has been one of the best drivers on safety car restarts that there is all over the back of his teammate Lewis Hamilton, trying to overtake him. And he gets a message from his engineer saying, Valtteri, don't overtake him, hold your position. Now for me, as much as the Ferrari situation I can agree with and I don't mind it, this Mercedes order I didn't like, because Valtteri Bottas had a chance to go and win that race and Mercedes should have let him go and do it.
Yeah, definitely. Were as well, like at least when because the past 3 to 4 years before Bottas came into Mercedes, it were pretty much just Hamilton v Rosberg at Mercedes-Benz, and at least we knew from the get-go with them two, because they had such an advantage over the rest of the field, the team were very happy to just say, we'll race then, do
it like just don't hit each other.
And that, in a way, that created such a better PR perspective for Mercedes-Benz compared to Ferrari. Because Ferrari, yeah, they're all about winning, but then when it comes down to the nitty-gritty of actually competing, it's like if for example, the number 2 driver at Ferrari, even when he has a good day, they'll just fuck him over because they want the number 1 driver to have good points.
Well, that's the thing. If Ferrari if their number 2 driver is winning the race and their number 1 driver is in second, they'll switch them round if they can. Whereas at Mercedes, go on.
No, sorry, you finish.
No, that's all right. Go on.
Sorry, can I ask a really amateur question?
Yeah, go for
really
it.
noob question now, to both of you. You're talking about second driver, first driver, that kind of thing. It may seem obvious to a lot of people, and I sort of get it myself, that you've got your sort of headline driver and then the guy behind him. How does it work? I don't know what I'm trying to say. So I'm taking Lewis Hamilton is a number 1 driver, and he has a number 2.
Yes, his number 2 is basically Valtteri Bottas.
Does a lot of it come down to PR, or is it the quality of the driver? I mean, when does it come down to like the second driver saying, "You're better than this guy, fucking do him"? Or does it come? I don't know what I'm quite. You're trying to ask here, really, but do you know what I mean?
You wanting to know the dynamics of it, and you were about to say, are there occasions where the second driver ignores the order?
Yeah, I mean, you both have talked about instances where the driver's gone, fuck off. Not a chance I'm listening to that order. Does the second driver overtake and become the number 1? Obviously you work your way up the ranks, I'm guessing.
There is no kind of official ranking. What used to happen in Formula 1 is it would be written into your contract that you were either the number 1 driver or the number 2 driver. So in Nigel Mansell's era, when he first raced for Williams' team, he was contracted as the number 2 driver, and he didn't have a problem with that. He was happy for that. until they started going to race weekends, and every practice session he's faster than his teammate. Every qualifying session he's faster than his teammate. He starts winning races more than his teammate. Then he's able to turn around to the team and go, just want to bring this up, I'm the number 2 driver and I'm better than he is. Right? That's how it used to happen in Formula 1, and the team owner would then go, yeah, you're right, let's have a look at these contracts and let's see what we'll do. Right? It's a little different now. In some teams they will go, there is no such thing as a number 1 driver and a number 2 driver, and Red Bull used to say they were one of them, and what they would say that they would do is, there is no number 1 and no number 2 driver. However, if over the course of a season one of their drivers is ahead in the driver standings to the other one and has more of a chance of winning the championship, the team may back them a little bit more. So they may swap a driver's position to aid them in the championship fight if the other guy has no chance of winning the title. Yeah. So some teams will have a number 1 and number 2, some teams won't. It is possible for a number 2 driver to basically outperform their teammate and then take that to the team and go, look, I'm doing better than he is. And James mentioned about Ricciardo and Vettel at Red Bull. Vettel, 4-time world champion, basically number 1 driver. Young kid comes in, Daniel Ricciardo, who's, everyone looks at it and goes, well, Vettel's clearly the number 1 driver and Ricciardo's his teammate, he's the number 2 driver. What happens in that one season? Ricciardo embarrasses Vettel. All of a sudden Ricciardo is able to go to the team and go, look, I want a better contract, I deserve more money than you're giving me because I've just beaten a 4-time world champion. So that can kind of come around and happen. There have been many occasions where a so-called number 2 driver has been instructed to do something to the benefit of his teammate and gone, nah, fuck that, I'm not going to do it. Some people love it, some viewers love it, some teams love it and some teams hate it. I'm kind of on the fence, because for me, if I'm a team owner or a team engineer and I give a driver an order, I want them to respect it. I want them to do it without argument. Do it. This is what I'm asking you to do. Do it. If you want to argue it, we'll talk about it afterwards. And the reason I mention that is because with Valtteri Bottas, I hate the fact that Mercedes said to him, don't attack Hamilton, hold your position, right? Because Bottas had the opportunity to win. Now, the reason Mercedes would have done that is, number 1 is, Vettel is out of the race, Mercedes can get a 1-2 finish, maximum points. Now, if they crash into each other, then they could, instead of gaining, they could lose. Now, I can understand that, but at the same time, it's not an order they needed to give. Vettel was out of the race. That means that even if Hamilton finishes second, he still ends up with a points gain on Sebastian Vettel in the championship. But
I think sometimes...
Sorry, James, just before you come in, one last thing I want to say on that is, what I did like, though, is when Ferrari were trying to give Kimi Raikkonen the coded message and he's saying, look, just tell me what you want to do. Mercedes say to Valtteri, we want you to hold your position. Sorry. What does Valtteri Bottas say? Copy, James. Nothing else. Doesn't argue it, doesn't dispute it, just says copy, understood, does it, no problem. They'll have talked about it afterwards, but there was no... That for me is a guy. That for me is a guy that I, as a team owner, I'd go, you know what? I'd hire that bloke, because if I give him an order, he's going to take it.
I'd hire him because, as well, like, I know that he didn't really get close enough to actually, you know. Well, to be fair, they were almost side by side in a couple of corners, but there were no moment where I sat and watched it and thought, "Fuck, they're going to crash." Yeah. There were no mental moves. They were all very, very calculated.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like when Alonso tried to attack Leclerc on lap 14 and nearly wiped out Sainz at the same time in the hairpin. But, I mean, I think it did dampen the result a little bit, not allowing Bottas to fight. And it was interesting that Nico Rosberg, who was working with Sky, he said, I don't think they'll have been given any team orders that have been free to race because Vettel's out of the race. So I think he would have been surprised to find that a team order was given. But at the same time, one of the reasons the team order would have been given is because of what Nico Rosberg did when he drove for Mercedes.
Yeah. So, like, just to explain,
Paul.
You
forgot his name for a minute then, didn't you, James?
We work with this bloke called David, and he calls us every other name other than what we're called. He calls me Paul, he calls Paul James, you know.
So I've done that. I'm the kind of guy, I work with
lovely.
people for a couple of years calling them a name and then find out that's not their name. Okay.
Yeah, for an explanation for Paul. At the Austrian Grand Prix in 2016, Rosberg pretty much like blocked Hamilton so much that he had to drive off the circuit, and they ended up in a bit of a crash. They were out in lead by a fairly comfortable gap and ended up coming away with Hamilton winning the race, but Rosberg finishing off the podium when the team were looking at some easy points. And it wasn't the fact that they didn't want to race, it was the fact that it got to a point where the drivers were taking the team for a ride rather than respecting the team orders. And what Bottas did, like what Dave says, what Bottas did, under that much pressure and you want to show the world that you're the best, he showed not only he's quick enough to win, but he also showed that he's got the brains and the right head screwed on, that if all happened, you could always count on him. Yeah. Whereas with Vettel, you wouldn't know what the fuck he's going to do.
No.
He could do all he wanted.
That was one of the other things I was going to say, actually, James, off that, was the 1-2 driver thing, and Hall let him in and get the maximum points and that kind of thing per second. Is there ever a situation where they've just become... Do they actually ever physically proper race each other? And I mean rivalry race each other?
Yes.
To just go, you know what I mean? Is that acceptable? Is it a dumb thing?
It is, yeah, right, okay. James mentioned about Nico Rosberg and Mercedes and being with Lewis Hamilton.
And proving you're the best, etc.
Their first few years together as teammates at Mercedes, they were free to race each other, and they did. They had proper wheel-to-wheel battles at a number of different racetracks, and it was amazing. It really was brilliant to watch, because we'd gone through an era of like there being drivers told, "Oh, don't attack your teammate," to now you got two guys in the best car being told, look, nobody else can race you, so you might as well race each other, just don't crash. And that's basically what it was like for a couple of years. Then they started crashing into each other, and that's when the team would say, look, you're free to race, but if we think you're going to crash into each other, we're then going to tell you not to race. So if you've never seen it, if you like watching your YouTube snippets, have a look at stuff to do with Hamilton versus Rosberg. I'm sure James can get you a couple of video clips, because there's some. I mean, there was a race in Bahrain where they had an amazing side-by-side battle for nearly a whole lap. But then you compare that to what happened at Spa, and then what happened at Spain, and then what happened at Austria, and it all adds up to the building of a story and the emotions of the championships at those times, and why, for example, Nico Rosberg, when he won his title, kind of decided, you know what, I've done what I've done what my goal was, win the title. I'm done. I'm retiring. He didn't want to have to go through all of the stress and the pressure that he knew he needed to deal with to do that again. So there are many occasions where that, not many occasions, there are some occasions where that does happen, or even, as James will agree, Force India. James, would you like to tell Paul about Force India?
Well,
or as Paul knows, the pink car.
Yeah, pretty much Force India got two drivers. One's Sergio Perez, a Mexican, and the other one's Esteban Ocon, who's from France. But he's really highly regarded in terms of Mercedes-Benz junior driver program.
Yeah.
Ocon turns up at Force India after Nico Hülkenberg left, and pretty much Perez decided to put it upon himself, rather than to nurture this young talent and bring him through, to pretty much treat him like shit. And
treat him like a number two. Treat him like a number two driver, didn't he?
Yeah. Even though there was nothing in anybody's contract, as to what we know, that there were a number one, number two process. And Perez even took it upon himself to even call it constantly his team.
Yeah.
Me and my team. Like to keep fucking on it. Pretty much, it all ended up in a bit of a nightmare in the first season, and there were more crashes, I think. They still did well as a team, but there were probably more crashes than anything else, really.
Yeah. They crashed into each other more times than most other cars crashed. It was literally every week. It was like, okay, whereabouts are they going to crash into each other? They crashed into each other in Baku, in Spa. Off the top of my head, I can't think of others. But I don't know if you noticed, James, they almost did it again this weekend. Now, this was go on.
I didn't notice, no.
Right, okay, let me find my note, because I was surprised that you missed this. Because it also involved your favourite driver, Nico Hülkenberg. I should have highlighted that note. Basically, there was a quick replay because we missed it at the time. Here he is, lap 23. Force India's nearly crashed in turn 8 where the Mercedes stand is. It looked like Perez tried to force Ocon off the road. Nico Hülkenberg is right behind him, watching him, thinking, holy shit. I mean, as we would, if we were behind two Force Indias at the moment, we'd be like, you know what, I'm not going to try overtaking them, I'll just wait until they crash into each other. And they pretty much nearly did, and Nico Hülkenberg's on the radio going, thank you very much, I'll take that, and drove past the both of them.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, I think at the time I thought it were a Sauber and a Force India. No, it was... But if that was the case, then what the fuck is Perez doing?
Exactly. It's a good fucking question. But yeah, I mean, the Force Indias, I mean, there's two teammates, like James says. Perez put him upon himself that he was kind of like, I'm the number one driver, I'm more experienced, and the team should benefit me. But the team basically said, no, fuck off. You're both our drivers, and you'll do what we tell you to do. And the team actually had to give them a strict order. From now on, you two don't race each other, because every time you do, you're crashing into each other, and that's costing us points and costing us money. And in a race like this weekend where they nearly crashed into each other, they lost a position to Hülkenberg. Both of their drivers still finished in the points, but they could have actually finished slightly higher up the order. So there's two drivers that it could get interesting. But having said that, seeing as we're talking quickly about Force India, I've seen today that there are rumours going around that Force India might go into administration as early as this week, but will be sold and rescued soon after. The driver market is on hold until the team's future is secured, and it looks like Renault have already got an option on Esteban Ocon, who's one of Force India's drivers. So it looks like Force India can't sign a driver until they know what's happening with their team, which means that team's in a whole world of pain at the moment, whole mess. But from what I can gather, I don't think there's going to be any change of driver at Red Bull. Ricciardo and Verstappen are going to stay as they are, unless Ferrari are going to take Ricciardo. I can't see that happening because Vettel's at Ferrari, and Vettel doesn't want to get embarrassed by his former teammate Ricciardo again, not in a team like Ferrari. So this is where it gets complicated, Paul, because that's where Vettel would be like, no, I don't want him as my teammate.
I'm listening.
He beat me last time. So I don't see that Red Bull are going to change their drivers. If Red Bull don't change their drivers, that means the Renault team, they want to keep Carlos Sainz if he's not moving to Red Bull. So they keep Carlos Sainz, and they've also got Nico Hülkenberg. and they're going to keep Nico Hulkenberg. That means there is no seat in that team for Esteban Ocon, who right now can't sign a new contract for Force India, but may be given an opportunity to race in a different team with a different engine in it. Well, I say a different engine, same engine as the Force India. He may be given the opportunity to race in a Williams who has got a Mercedes engine. Now this is where like some new viewers may get lost in this train of thought. So Force India are in trouble. The only reason that Ocon is actually racing for Force India is because Ocon very nearly missed out on Formula 1 completely. His junior career was coming to an end. He had no options. And he decided, you know what, I'm going to go and have a word with Toto Wolff, the owner of, the team manager of the Mercedes team. He goes and talks to Toto Wolff and says, look, Toto, I don't have anywhere to race. Sauber have said they may be interested, but I don't know what's going to happen there. I'm not looking too confident. Is there anything that you can do for me? Toto Wolff turns round to him and says, right, if the Sauber deal doesn't happen, this is a couple of years ago, he says, if the Sauber deal doesn't happen, come and have a word with me. The Sauber deal falls through. Ocon straight to Toto Wolff and says the Sauber deal has dropped, it's fallen through. Toto Wolff says, okay, don't worry, I'll take you, you're now my driver. Within 1 year, he's doing reserve, Force India reserve driver and having test sessions in the Force India car. The next year, he's in that car as a permanent driver, and he has shown a lot of people that he's more than capable of racing. He's got ability. So now there's a possibility of him moving to a bigger team, or replacing somebody at Williams, or going into Renault if a seat becomes available there. Toto Wolff has said he is a potential future world champion. That's how good he thinks he is. So Ocon is somebody that actually Toto Wolff is looking at as, if a seat becomes available in Mercedes, we could take Ocon.
Yeah, I think the only thing that's preventing Toto Wolff from signing Ocon for the proper Mercedes-Benz seat were the fact I think he'd only had, I don't even think he'd had 1 year experience yet in Formula 1.
Yeah.
He might have had 1 year of experience in the Force. No, I don't think he did. I think he just came into Formula 1 and went into the Force India, and that was the year when Bottas was signed from Williams to Mercedes.
Yeah.
But if a Williams offer were opened up to me, I'd probably turn it down, to be fair.
I'd be tempted to agree with you, comparing Force India to Williams, because Williams are shit at the moment. We may lose you on this next rant I'm going to go on, Paul, but don't worry. If you have any questions,
don't worry. I'm here. I'm not asleep. I'm still listening.
Well, the thing is, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them, right? Because as daft as it might sound, other people may have the same questions, but may be embarrassed to ask them.
The thing is, I'm listening and I'm trying my best to take it all in, and I'm sort of storing sort of things up in my mind that I want to bring up, but I'm not going to butt in your floor, because it's your podcast, it's your thing.
You're allowed to. I'd rather people butt in and ask a question. If I need to finish what I'm saying so I don't forget it, I'll tell you to wait, because otherwise I won't forget it. But no, if you have questions, ask them. See, now I forgot what I was going to fucking say. Okay. No, right. Okay, go on. I have remembered. Right. James has said if a Williams seat was offered, he wouldn't take it. Right, now I'd be tempted to agree with him, because Williams is shit. There's good sides and bad sides to what Williams are doing at the moment. I mentioned a few weeks ago that Robert Kubica was in the car to test things, to work out what's wrong with the car, nothing to do with getting the car ready for a race weekend. The practice sessions for this Grand Prix, the car was covered in so much aerodynamic paint that they actually even had different aero colour paints on the front wing and on the body of the car, so they could see exactly what was going on. Williams are doing so much work at the moment just to try and find out what is wrong with their car, that in one way, it's a really good thing that they're going to all this effort, but two, it shows just how shit a situation they're in at the moment, that they're having to go to levels that no other team has had to go to in years to work out what's wrong with it. It's a little bit like, you know what, you've got the shits and you spend a whole year trying to work out why you had the shits, and then someone turns around and goes, well, you had a curry the night before, and you, oh yeah, it was, wasn't it? Yeah, I had a curry, yeah. That's kind of the shit situation they're in at the moment. They're waiting for that, oh yeah, you had a curry.
Yeah, they're waiting for that memory moment of, oh yeah, we had a curry.
Yeah, they are.
But it's just taking 6 months to remember what they've fucked up on.
Well, it kind of, that's not a bad analogy. It's kind of like someone's waiting to go, oh, well, yeah, I used some out-of-date chicken in the curry. That's what it'll be. That's why you had the shits. And it's
That's
kind
why Harry's shit.
Yeah.
Oh, it's because we were putting these wheels on with blue tack.
yeah. I mean, so anyway, if you have any questions about it, go for it. I'll take a breather for a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. What? What? Go on, Paul.
Okay. It's not really related to what you're saying. It's what you're talking about. So I'm just. Is that okay?
Yeah.
The first one was again, I keep relating back to these people who are into F1. My neighbour, and he says that this was approximately a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago ish, and it was the qualifying, and there was a driver, and he just fucked up in the qualifying, and he was sulking on the side of the track holding his helmet, and he said his dad is basically a billionaire, so he just paid his son into the F1.
Lance Stroll.
Yeah. That's the dickhead. That's him.
That's the dickhead. You got that right.
Yeah. And Lance Stroll, that's it, Lance Stroll, and he said he's there for money, not by merit. Do you know what I mean? As he hasn't earned his place, he's paid his place. And how much of that goes on? Is there any sort of? Oh, I mean, I'm asking sort of this shit, probably amateur shit questions here, but
there's nothing. There's nothing wrong with asking these questions, though, right? Because I mean, it is an interesting topic. It's rife, right? There's 20 drivers on the grid. I'd probably say, just off the top of my head, there's probably 8 of them that are paid to race. The rest of them, yes, they are paid to race, but they will have had to have brought X amount of pounds through sponsorship to the team. So someone like
and skill. I'm taking and skill on top of that.
No. Of those 12, maybe 6 of them are there because they've got a bit of skill. They also bring money through sponsorships, and they also get paid by the team. The other 6, they're there not because of how good they are, but because of how much money they bring. Now, Lance Stroll, James could go off on this one because he has done before. Lance Stroll simply is only in Formula 1 because his dad owns Tommy Hilfiger and paid for him to be there.
That's what my name. His dad's paid for him to be there. He's paid for the seat.
Exactly. Now Williams, the team that he drives for, they're in a situation where, I mean, me and James and Steve have discussed the situation. They're in a situation where they can't afford to go. You know what? This guy's offering to pay us £30 million over 3 years to let his son race our car. We need that £30 million. Let's do it. Instead of having someone like Robert Kubica, who could be a bit of a risk, isn't going to bring us £30 million, but is a better driver. Yeah, we'll ignore him because we need the £30 million, and that's kind of that's why Lance Stroll's in the car. It's kind of why Sirotkin's in the car, but he actually has supposedly more talent than his teammate Stroll. Who else is there? Marcus Ericsson, he's only in the car because of the sponsorship money that he brings. Sergio Perez, to begin with, was only in because of the money he brought from Mexico. Pastor Maldonado was only racing because of the money he brought from a Venezuelan oil company. Who else was there? I mean, there's still I can't think of the names at the moment, but there are quite a few in Formula One that have gone that route. I mean, basically, if you had £60 million and you knew how to drive a car to within a standard, you could get into Formula One.
Because the teams are that desperate for money.
Yeah.
They'll take you. And the only thing that I've heard, Dave, I don't know if you've heard this, but Lance Stroll, apparently his dad's so fucked off with Williams because he's currently paying Williams £30 million pounds per year for Stroll to be there.
Yeah.
Now, apparently this were front loaded, so meaning the first year he paid something like I think it were 50 million. So that's out of the deal for 3 years of 90 million.
He's paid 50 up front.
Yeah, he's paid 50 up front.
James?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to make... Sorry, 30 million just to be there, not to do anything. Just to be there.
Just to drive the car.
Just to drive the car. Okay, fair enough. Yep, cool. Yep.
So 50 million to drive the car for the season. So then the remaining amount, let me work this out. I should
40 million.
I'll work it. Yeah. So the remainder, I think he's paid. I think it were 30 million for this year, and then the last year they only get 10.
Yeah.
But they've front loaded it so that they can develop the car.
Mm-hmm. Apparently,
his dad's so fucked off. He's considering pulling his son out of Williams.
Please do.
Pulling his son out of Williams altogether and going straight to another team and something to do with contract, as if to forfeit some money to get him out of the contract, just to get him in another team. Now, his father, who owns Tommy Hilfiger, is currently sponsoring the Mercedes-Benz team. Now, I'm not saying Mercedes-Benz would ever consider taking him, but if you've got somebody who's got that much brass, I won't be surprised that Mercedes-Benz didn't say to the bloke who owns Tommy Hilfiger, "What finger? Why don't you just buy Force India and then you've got your son's dream then? You don't have to worry about. You know what I mean?
It's interesting you said. I was gonna say a similar thing, right? Okay. You know, I went on the rant a moment ago, Paul, about this guy Ocon and his options of where he could race, right?
Yep.
This is now where we get into conjecture or prediction. Force India is where Esteban Ocon races, right? Lance Stroll races in Williams. His dad owns Tommy Hilfiger, and as James mentioned, this year started sponsoring Mercedes. Lance Stroll is nowhere near good enough to ever get near a Mercedes, let alone get in one, no matter how much money his dad offers to Mercedes. It ain't going to happen. But Toto Wolff and Mercedes are clever enough to go, well, you know what? If Stroll wants to get out of Williams, that could probably be good for Williams. And if Stroll wants to race for another car, another team, maybe we could swap Esteban Ocon with Lance Stroll. Esteban Ocon goes to Williams. Williams may get good in the near future. Lance Stroll and his dad, Tommy Hilfiger, go to Force India, putting money into Force India. Force India? Who the fuck are they? Force India. Probably fuck up that team, but to a degree probably secure that team's future, while benefiting Williams, benefiting Force India, benefiting Mercedes. That's a deal that I could probably see happening, you know, James.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. But as well, I mean, you see how much. I know that obviously the top Formula 1 team spends so much fucking money. But the teams that are really, really, you know, really good, the ones where they self-promote their products all over the car. For example, Red Bull.
Yep.
All of theirs sell drinks, but at the same time, their branding is fucking everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And there's nothing better. I mean, obviously they throw a bit of a hissy fit if the Red Bulls are shit, but the thing that keeps bringing them back to Formula 1, and the reason why they probably won't pull out of Formula 1, is the amount of eyes that they get on the screen looking at that Red Bull logo it basically cancels out all the money that they're spending on getting that car on the telly.
Yeah, I mean the saying is true as well, that even bad press is good press, depending on how bad the press is.
And all I'm thinking is, if you, we've said, haven't we, about like how much a Formula 1 car costs and all this lot. But if you've seriously got a son who thinks he's good enough to win races and stuff like that. I mean, he's been on podium. I'm not saying he's utter shit, but if you, let's say I'm Tommy Hilfiger, right, and I've got my son Lance Stroll crying, going, "Dad, I need a seat." I'd probably say, you know what? If you're a company as big as Tommy Hilfiger with that much bloody money, you may as well buy a team, get your branding all over the side of the car, and then you get a second driver who is the pay driver, to kind of cancel out some of them costs.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be tempted. In all honesty, if I had a son, "Daddy, I want to see," I'd go, well, "Okay, well, go and race in this formula and see if you're good enough. If you're good enough to win that, go into the next one. If you're good enough to win that, go into the next one. And if you're good enough to get into Formula 1, then you can have a seat in my car. Until then, I'm driving the fucker, so piss off." So, Paul, you were going to say something a moment ago while James was going on.
No, I was just laughing along with what he was saying. But one of the second thing I was going to bring it up again, if it wasn't for prompting from people who around me who were into F1, was the new. Is it the Halo?
The Halo, yeah.
The Halo and apparently it splits the vision in two. I don't know if that's true. You can put me shit.
It does a little bit.
I'll
let James go on about the Halo. I just need to go and close my bathroom window, otherwise I'm going to end up with shitloads of bugs in my bathroom. So go on, James. Halo.
Yeah. So basically, to the drivers, it's not too bad, but in terms of visuals for, let's say, spectators watching, it doesn't look very pretty. But it's there basically to save your life if, let's say, a wheel flies off a car and bounces towards your head. I mean, at slow speed, that it wouldn't really be a problem, but when you're bombing at 200 mile an hour, if you hit a tyre, your head would just snap off. So it's pretty much there basically to prevent your head from getting snapped off.
Sorry to butt in there, James. So you say it's there to not get your head snapped off, whatever. Is it not at all to do with streamline?
It's nothing to do. It's nothing to do with aerodynamics. I mean, one of the things that has been when the Halo was designed and the concept was come out, everybody hated it. Drivers didn't like the look of it, and most fans hated it. There has been a couple of situations this year in Formula 1 and in the slightly lower formulas, Formula 2, Formula 3, where crashes have happened and you've been able to go, you know what, if there wasn't a halo on the car, they'd probably be hurt. So it's kind of done its job. It's purely been brought in for safety. Teams have been allowed to do a bit of work with it to try and make it a little bit more aerodynamically efficient, but it is 100% a safety feature. So it's a little bit like the condom of the Formula 1 world. Doesn't look great, doesn't feel great, it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but when you need it to, it'll do a job for you.
Studded for their pleasure.
Exactly. Or some of them are a bit ribbed and some of them have got spikes on them, but those ones are definitely not nice. What I will say though is this weekend's Grand Prix, I don't know, I mean, you mentioned the Halo. Me and James and Steve, before this we ranted about the Halo, we talked about the Halo. I've drove a car on a PC simulator racing game with a halo to show the kind of view that you'd have out of the car. And one of the things that we all said was we didn't like the look of it, it's ugly, we hated it, and you can't see the driver. I don't know if James is the same mindset as I am now, which is when I look at current Formula 1 cars now, I don't even see the halo.
Yeah, I've got to a point where I'm just so used to it, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
But when it first came in, I was a bit like, oh, it doesn't look right good.
Yeah.
But I know that an engineer like Ross Brawn, I'm pretty sure he can manipulate it in future years so that it actually looks quite decent.
Sexy.
I think yeah, the Formula E car does look very good, even with a halo.
Button in there real quick. Sorry, you said you did the driving simulator with the halo.
Yeah.
How did it look from your perspective? Did it split your vision into? How was it from your perspective?
No, what I found was, and I showed some images on the podcast when we talked about it. What I found.
Sorry, I'm bringing up old ground here.
That's fine. It's not a problem. I mean, the thing is, it's like I say, for people who were, when you first mentioned to me before we came live that you're not really into Formula One, right? At first I was like, oh shit, but at the same time, it's not a bad thing, because if we can explain stuff to you that you can understand, then it works. And I mentioned about how Formula One and how they're trying to broadcast Formula One at the moment in as if you are always showing it to somebody new, and that's kind of how I used to try broadcasting live Formula One games that we would do. I know, sorry Lucas, we're mentioning Formula One games again, but that's how I used to do it. Imagine you're presenting to someone for the first time ever. So having these questions and asking these questions and bringing up past stories is not a problem. What I found when I drove it with a halo was, at a circuit like Spa, Eau Rouge, there was a lot of people saying you will not be able to see up the hill. The halo will block your view. When I drove it, visibility was not a problem. But I did notice that there would be a certain few areas where it would be a problem, and that was the column in the middle. There are times that will block a car out of your view. Meaning, whether it be at high speed on a straight, a car in the distance, you simply won't see it behind that narrow block until it gets so close that all of a sudden it's in your view. And that has turned out to be a factor and has been highlighted a few times over the course of the year, that drivers haven't been able to see a car in the distance ahead. As for splitting the view, to be honest, in corners it was never a problem, because you're always looking towards like the left wheel or the right wheel when you're sort of heading into corners, so you're never really looking at that centre column except for when you're on a straight. So that was the only time it was a problem for me, was on a straight. But other than that, for me it was just personally off-putting that it was there. But as James will know, and anyone that plays racing games, sorry Lucas, is that when you're racing a car from a cockpit view, there are little aerials on a Formula One car, right? That, to be honest, you don't notice until somebody points it out to you. Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it, and that's where your eyes of focus go. So for drivers, that experience of the halo being there, it would either have been not in their focus at all and they'd never really bother about it, or it would have been all their eyes focused on and they would have had to have trained themselves to look beyond it. A little bit like if you've ever been in a car that's got heated elements in its windscreen. If you don't know what I mean, then
I do.
You do. Other people might not. If you've got heated elements in your screen, you'll never see them until the one time you do see them, and once you've seen them you can't not see them, and then when you do see them again you have to tell your eyes, look past that. So there you go, that's Halo for you. Anything else you want to add, James?
I'm just trying to think of what else happened. I mean, in the race, the rain came down, Vettel binned it, and then there was that moment where Hamilton decided he was going to stay out rather than pit. And to be fair, I didn't think they would have told him to pit anyway, because I think it had only been about 6 laps. He'd been on them ultra soft, so they weren't exactly old. But yeah, he decided to stay out. But then the only thing that bugs me slightly is, like with a lot of commentators nowadays, Crofty straight away goes, well, is that allowed? Is that allowed? Are you allowed to go across that ground? I kind of thought, fuck's sakes, you can't really enjoy watching a race because you've just got somebody going, I understand he's just there to be like, you know, pose that question. But at the same time, I'm like, just enjoy the race. is it made a huge difference to the race? Was it dangerous? Was it no? So let's just watch the race and go. Like, imagine if David Croft were a steward, he'd be one of these that like give you a penalty for fucking sneezing.
Quite possibly. Just want to give a quick shout out to Dave the Harper. He's off to bed. He's got an operation tomorrow, so Dave, hope the operation goes well. And we'll find out in a year if it was the curry or not. But yeah, hope everything goes well tomorrow, and we'll obviously hopefully hear from you in a couple of days. It's interesting you say what you did there, James, about Lewis Hamilton. I don't know if Paul has seen what Lewis Hamilton did or not. If not, we can explain it to you. I saw what Lewis Hamilton did, and interestingly, James, I had the same thought as Crofty, which was, is that allowed? That was my instant. That was my instant thought. Is that allowed? But I mean, I don't know if I would call myself a commentator. I used to be in the world of online gaming, so maybe that's why I thought that.
You've got to be a commentator. Paul's a commentator, so you're definitely a commentator.
Okay.
Whoa, steady on there, steady
well,
on.
Well, Nigel's a commentator. Paul's a nobody.
Exactly.
Sorry.
It's a persona. It's a persona.
Exactly. So yeah, I wondered, is that allowed? But from a commentator sense, Crofty says, is that allowed? And that's what Brundle is there for, to go, well, yeah, or no, it's not, or you know what, I don't know. And I have seen so much over social media this weekend, right, talking about what Lewis Hamilton did. Now, it was investigated after the race and deemed to be okay, right? But the uproar on social media has been phenomenal, going, well, how can Hamilton get away with this when Kimi Raikkonen was given a 5 or 10 second penalty in Baku for crossing the pit lane white line on the entry, and bringing up other instances where drivers have been penalised. And I must admit, this is one of the things I fucking hate about social media. People go on these rants, but they don't know the facts, and it comes down to this. In the Kimi Raikkonen situation in Baku, he crossed the pit entry white line. Now, over the course of a race weekend, there are a number of driver race briefings, right? They have safety briefings. They have their first one is to review what happened at the previous event, and for the drivers to bring up anything they want to discuss. And over the course of these briefings in Baku, the steward stated, drivers, do not cross the pit lane entry white line, and if you do go into the pit entry, do not come back onto the circuit. The reason that this was mentioned in that race briefing was because on that track, at that part of the circuit, cars are doing over 200 miles an hour. So if you suddenly at the last moment come back out of the pit entry onto the racetrack when a guy behind doesn't expect it, he's doing 200 miles an hour, you're potentially doing somewhere between 100 and 200. If you guys collide, then we're going to get the crash that Paul wants to see, right? And may even get the decapitation that James wants to see. But that's going to be a train wreck. That's going to be an absolute disaster. So at certain racetracks, the stewards will give specific instructions regarding a pit entry and a pit exit. Now, in Hockenheim, there was no instruction on the pit entry other than you must enter the pits before the bollard. If you enter the pits after the bollard, you'll get a penalty. That was the only instruction. So what Lewis Hamilton did, which was enter the pit lane and then rejoin the track, although in black and white form is the same as what Kimi Raikkonen did, they are actually two very different situations because of the following. A, it was not mentioned that you can't do it in the driver briefing. B, there is nothing in the rules to say that you can't do it, which is why stewards have to specifically say it at certain tracks. C, when Kimi Raikkonen did it, it was full racing speed. D, when Lewis Hamilton did it, it was under safety car, there were no cars near him, and when he rejoined the track, the area of the track he rejoined on is not the racing line. Cars would have been on the left hand side of the circuit, he was on the right hand side of the circuit, so he was deemed to have rejoined the track in a safe manner. Admittedly,
Yeah.
it'd have been much better off just going straight through the pit lane, coming out, it'd have still been in the same place, no questions would have been asked. But I can understand in that moment of confusion, a driver doing what he did.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I mean, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but let's say, for example, them ultra softs for Bottas were ready, he might not have come out in front of Bottas if he'd have pitted.
That is true.
So, in a way, it's kind of fortuitous that he did that. But sometimes I just think it's a bit... F1 can get a bit nanny-statey. I mean, like... I understand.
You know, it can, but interestingly... Right, I mean, you'll know this, but if you watch stuff on YouTube, it tends to recommend similar stuff for you.
Yeah.
Right? One of the videos it recommended for me recently was... no, it wasn't actually. Alexandra Daddario nude scene. Check that out. No, it was actually the last so many black flags in Formula 1. Right? And watching it, you saying Formula 1's could get to a bit of a nanny state. You know what? There are so many things that have happened in the last few years in Formula 1 that in the past would have been a black flag, which means race over for that guy. So to put it into perspective, go on.
I would have definitely said Michael Schumacher against Barrichello at Hungary in 2010.
Yep, that would have been a black flag. Right, okay, get this. You know how... actually, I'll turn this on Paul a little bit. Paul, do you understand what the situation is when a safety car comes out?
I'm guessing it's because something's happened on the track somewhere, which means everybody needs to just slow down a bit.
Okay, kind of, yeah.
Am I wrong?
No, you're kind of right. It basically means, yeah, you've got to slow. Something's happened on the track. Everybody's got to slow down, and what it actually means is that the people who run Formula 1, or in this case the FIA, they're going to put a car on the track, which is the safety car, and you've all got to follow it. Right? So he will dictate how fast and slow you go. So it's as simple as that. And the rules are no overtaking. Right? You're not allowed to overtake because basically we're nullifying the race. Now, this weekend, I don't know if you saw this, James, but Carlos Sainz, who races for Renault, overtook somebody under safety car conditions.
I didn't see it, but I saw the message.
Okay, well,
Yeah, right.
they did show a replay of it. It must have literally just been like shortly after they brought the safety car out, or notified that the safety car was coming out. But he overtook somebody, and he was given a 10-second penalty for overtaking somebody under the safety car. However, when I watched this YouTube video, that would have been a black flag out of the race. Now, in recent history, Juan Pablo Montoya did the same thing, overtook somebody under a safety car condition, wasn't black flagged, completed the race, won the race, and was then disqualified.
Yeah.
So you could say, yeah, Formula 1's getting a bit nanny state, but actually the stuff that people get 5-10 second penalties for now, that in the past would have been black flag. Lewis Hamilton would have been black flag for exiting the pit entry in the way that he did.
Yeah. I just wish though that it'd be a little bit more, not in terms of wheel to wheel action. I just wish it'd be a bit more common sense to be used. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got to say, common sense was used with the officials Baku, and common sense were used at Hockenheim. But you sometimes find some scenarios where you're like, hang on, why have they got a penalty? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And sometimes for example, I think let's say for example, there were a bit of a bump through a corner and a car went off the circuit and then came back on. If that car went off the circuit and then came back on in a dangerous manner, yeah, fair enough, give him a penalty. But if that car's come off and then he's got nowhere to go other than to come back on and still gets a penalty, you're a bit like, well,
damned if you do,
what you're
damned
meant
if
to do.
you don't.
Yeah, them situations I get a bit like where I've got to say I did watch that. I was saying to Paul earlier, I did watch that Derek Warwick thing that you recommended me to watch. Fucking hell, I was nearly bawling. I'm there doing my work and I'm like, Paul, he's crying.
I was nearly crying. The thing I said, I didn't want to spoil it for you because I wanted to see what happened when you watched it. I was nearly in tears when I watched it. But it opens your eyes, doesn't it?
I didn't see his face because my iPhone were in my pocket. I was just listening to it, and I thought Wi-Fi had gone down because I couldn't hear him for about a minute.
Aye,
and then I realised he'd like proper choked up.
Yeah.
Because he didn't mention why he were getting choked up until he went, and my brother died. I was like, oh no!
Yeah, I know. But it's.
But yeah, I've got to say that documentary has definitely opened my eyes. And like I say,
did it change your opinion of Derek Warwick, the steward?
Yeah, completely. I just thought he were a grumpy old bastard, but now I know him.
Kick the fuck out of man.
Now you know him. Yeah. Now you kind of have a bit of an insight. You kind of, you got a bit more respect. Whereas before, you just thought, oh, he's a grumpy bugger. I think that could be done for a lot of things, like politics.
Oh,
you should do that. Like when you want to vote for a candidate, don't fucking give them bullshit. Just let's get to nitty gritty. Let's get why you were here and why you want to do this.
Yeah.
And then we'll do a vote.
Yeah. Because knowing. After I watched the documentary about Derek Warwick, to be fair, if you've listened to it or seen it, Paul, some of it might go over your head, but it's a fabulous insight into somebody who raced in Formula 1 years ago that's still involved now. That, James was very much like bashing him, to be honest, a few weeks ago, but I knew. I was of a similar mindset. I watched this documentary and I was like, holy shit, that's properly opened my eyes as to him as a person and why he does what he does. There's not a lot of programs in this little series, but there are a few people in Formula 1 that you just get to know a bit more about the people that they are, and they are fascinating stories. But anyway, so let's go a little bit more back to Hockenheim a little bit. I've got a few of my notes that I want to go through. I'm not going to go through all of my notes like I have done on previous podcasts. I've just sort of highlighted a few things. One of the things I wanted to talk about, James, was Lewis Hamilton. Right. In the previous race at Silverstone, you said that although it was a little bit entertaining, he only did what he did because he was in the most powerful car. He was in the best car on the grid. So as I was making my notes about Lewis Hamilton, obviously he started 14th on the soft tyres, possibly to try and not pit until the rain comes. Let's see, lap 1 he was still in the same place. Lap 2 he's making moves. It was caught live on camera. Lap 4 Hamilton overtook Leclerc into turn 6. All Hamilton's moves have been caught live, which is good. Lap 6 Hamilton Sainz, Hamilton now P9. Not seeing any other action, but I put that's okay. And the reason I wrote that's okay is there was not a lot happening elsewhere, so we're focusing on the action that's happening, which is Hamilton overtaking people. Move on to lap 8. Hamilton now in P8. When he gets to P5, that's when it will get a little bit tougher, because that's Vettel, Bottas, Raikkonen and Verstappen. By lap 9 Hamilton was up to P7 with another overtake in turn 6, and then lap 11 another turn 6 overtake on Hulkenberg. Now he's P6, and then I wrote Hamilton needs to close a 2-second gap. Lap 14 Hamilton is now P5 with Magnussen being dropped down to P6 in turn 6 again. Then I wrote on lap 14 Ferrari pit Kimi Raikkonen for the soft tyres. Is that to halt Lewis Hamilton, because Kimi Raikkonen came out right in front of Lewis Hamilton? Did you think that same there, James?
just literally last 20 seconds of your question, I've blanked out.
Thought you might have done. That's why I came to you. When Ferrari pitted Kimi Raikkonen for the first time, did they do it to try and hold up Lewis Hamilton? Because Raikkonen came out right in front of him.
Yeah, definitely. But in a way, it kind of worked in Raikkonen's favour because then he were able to jump Vettel. But it just, I don't know, it just baffles me. Like, clearly, whoever works at strategy for Ferrari, yeah, he were there to try and hold up Hamilton, but somebody should have gone, well, hang on, if we do pit him now, the good thing is we're going to box Hamilton behind and he won't be able to get past. So that's a good idea, right? But the negative is, if he gets some new tyres and we want Vettel to stay out, he's going to end up in front of him when Vettel pits. So what's the worst thing that can happen? I don't understand why they didn't just go, you know what? And I think kind of in a way, I wish F1 were a bit more like give more emphasis to the driver rather than a predetermined strategy. Go to the driver, right, well, we recommend you pit on this lap. And then just leave it down to the driver, and if the driver wants to stay out, he stays out. If he wants to pit early, he pits early.
So you think it should be down to the driver to say to the team, I'm pitting this lap, and the team go, okay, rather than the team going, you should pit this lap, or you should keep going?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in a way, I think that'd be the best way to go, really, because once again, you're putting more emphasis on the driver. I mean, when it starts raining, and now, obviously, they're getting weather reports from cows out in fields miles away going, oh, they're sat down now, we better pit.
They're all led on the side, it's going to piss it down.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas I think it should be purely down to driver going, I think I could go quicker on some wet tyres here, or pit, or... you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, you know, them strategy calls with like I think Charles Leclerc went to a set of inters.
Verstappen, Leclerc.
You don't know whether that's the driver's call or if that's the engineer's call.
Well, yeah, you're right. We don't. Had those guys been in the top teams, we probably would have heard more of their radio calls. I did write down exactly who went on to which time. To be honest, some of the decisions were fucking baffling.
Well, full wets were mental. Whoever the fuck put some full wets on were fucking mental.
Okay, so I mean, I noticed that. When the rain came, I mean, lap 42, Hamilton pitted, and I actually wrote, he pitted for ultra softs, and I actually wrote, if full rain comes, he's screwed, because he would have been. He came out in P5 behind lots of traffic, 11.5 seconds behind Verstappen, right? 2 laps later, it rains quite heavy at turn 6, but only in turn 6. Lap 45, Leclerc pits, puts inters on. Alonso pits, put inters on. Gasly pits, puts full wet tyres on. Bearing in mind it's only raining on one fucking corner. Leclerc then starts plummeting positions the next lap. Lost 3 positions, one straight after the other. And everybody who pitted and put inters or full wets on, within 4 laps was back in the pits taking them off. I mean, whoever it was that told Gasly to put full wet tyres on needs sacking.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's just mental. I'm thinking we might have missed. Is Paul still here? I think I'll just call him back. Are you here, Paul?
No, we have. I think we have lost him. Yeah.
Well, I'll just give him a ring back. But yeah, that were just a fucking joke. That try to work out how to send him a thing. I did it earlier.
Yeah. So yeah, just bear with us a few moments, folks, while See if we can get Paul back in. I do know James said that Paul will be available till 10 o'clock, and it almost is 10 o'clock.
It is, yeah. His wife might have pulled him away.
His Wi-Fi or his wife? But yeah, I mean, the thing is with the tyres, I mean, I would like to, if we can get Paul back, I mean, he might not know too much about what happened in the race, but that's a situation that, for me, as a new viewer, would be quite exciting. Like, seeing that bit of rain come, well, what's going to happen? I know I found it exciting. I mean, harps back to the days when Bernie Eccleston said, oh, maybe we should just water a couple of corners on the track randomly. Obviously, it's a ridiculous idea, but when the rain comes like it did on 1 or 2 corners, it did throw a massive spanner in the works. It really spiced up that race. You got teams pitting. I mean, for Verstappen, it was no risk, really. If it had have worked for him, he could have gained. If it didn't work, he wasn't going to lose anything. So I can kind of understand them going for it. The others, ridiculous. I mean, in all fairness, when you got Stoffel Van Dorn, his engineer saying, okay, we think it's time to box for the Inters. If Stoffel Van Dorn has got the ability to go, actually, no, I want to stay on the slicks, it'll be better. If he can do that, then Pierre Gasly should have done that. Leclerc should have done that. And anybody else who thought about going to other tyres should have done that. And to be honest, Lewis Hamilton staying on the ultra soft tyres that he'd only just put on was a wonder call. I would love to hear the radio communications from that conversation, because if you remember, James, you know when Mercedes fucked up Lewis Hamilton's strategy, and the head lead engineer came on and said, Lewis, it's James or whatever his name was, says that was my mistake, I've lost you the win, but I believe in you, you can get this back. I could imagine there would have been some similar kind of conversation with the tyre choices and the conversation about the rain. And I would have loved to have heard what the likes of Lewis Hamilton, Bottas, Vettel, Raikkonen were saying in that tyre conversation. Are you still with me, James? I think I've lost James now. James? Hello? Oh dear. Well, we'll see if we can get James back. It's possible that they've invited me to another call. Bear with me a sec. Or James is on mute and he hasn't realised it. James, are you there? Okay, so while we try and solve our technical difficulties, oh, I heard something there.
Dave, I'm back, Dave.
What happened? Where did you go? I was talking to you.
It took me to another chat room. I got scared.
Oh right.
I don't understand. I'm trying to invite Paul back. He's sat there going, "Oh, I can't get back." I'm trying to work out how the frig to get him back in.
I may be able to do it. Just bear with me 1 second.
And people.
Hello.
Aha!
Hello.
I've heard him. Hello.
I'm back. I'm sorry about that. My internet just went to sleep on me then.
That's all right. It happens to James quite often. Saying that, James has fallen asleep on us before. Yeah. So I was just going on about the tyres when it rained and all that kind of stuff. And I was going to say, obviously, Paul, you've not heard anything with me and James have been talking about for the last 5-10 minutes. I was going to say, as a new viewer, obviously you might not know too much about what happened in Hockenheim regarding the rain, but as a new viewer, what would rain coming into a race bring to you, do you reckon?
Ooh, well, okay, on a proper basic caveman style, rain brings skids, crashes, the lot.
The works.
the works. But on a more upper level, I know that James showed me a few highlights from the race, and he was getting really excited and really giddy, saying, "Oh, they all went into the sort of pits, and they all got and they're driving around on wets, and it's only raining on one corner." And he were really getting into it and getting really enthusiastic. But to me personally, it just looked sort of the same, more of the same. But again, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about if you sort of follow it and get into it and get more into the technical side of it, it means a bit more. But yeah, going back to basics, if it was rain, it would mean skids, crashes, spinning, the sort of exciting stuff.
Yeah.
The base.
And the thing, it does. I mean, when I heard that there was a possibility of rain before the race, I was like, yes. Because there's some tracks where you really don't want it to rain, but a proper Grand Prix circuit, like Hockenheim is, if it rains, it can be fun. Silverstone, Spa, Austria, Monza, all of these places, when it rains, the cars don't go as quick, but shit can go down. And anything can happen, and it often does. So for this weekend, when you've got I got excited, as it sounds like James did, where you got some people are pitting for wet tyres or inters or intermediate tyres or full wet tyres, and it's like, is that the right decision? Because it's only raining a little bit, and you got other people going, oh, you know what? I think I can cope with a little bit of wetness in one corner. I'll be fine everywhere else. And bringing all of that, it's just like, what's going to happen? Because if somebody fucks up, then will other people react? Now, Jokey mentioned about you seeing the shell cart go off. I know James says he whooped a bit. I very nearly did. I was like, yes! And what got me, I don't know if you noticed, James, the amount of cheer that came from the crowd when Vettel crashed.
It was a German Grand Prix and it was a German driver.
Yeah.
It was like the Germans more appreciate the Mercedes-Benz team than they do a German driver in a Ferrari.
Yeah. I mean,
they went mental for it. They were like, yes, he's fucking out, like, as if they didn't like him.
Yeah, the thing, not only that, there was a lot of fans wearing Red Bull gear that were cheering the fact he'd crashed out.
Yeah, they're saying a lot of Dutch turned up, but they seem to be everywhere, these Dutch.
As an amateur, I'd be there in my Apple Tango t-shirt.
As long as you're facing the right direction, Paul, it wouldn't matter. But these cars aren't going very fast. Yeah, that's the car park, Paul. Turn around.
Yeah. You're just watching the main road there.
Yeah. But no, I mean, the Vettel crash was, you know what? I didn't see it coming. I didn't see it happening. I mentioned earlier on about the broadcasting being so much better at this Grand Prix, and it is. I mean, for someone that's new to the sport, Paul, if you watched Melbourne or any of the first sort of 6-7 races, they'd probably bore the fuck out of you, because the way they're broadcasted, I wouldn't necessarily say the way they're commentated on, they do the best they can, but the footage that you're shown is pretty fucking shit, right? Silverstone,
and you pay 35 quid a month for this.
Yeah, and it's shit. I mean, it's, well, as avid fans, we've watched it going, well, we can see that, like, people are close to each other. You're not showing it. We can see now on the left timing tower on the left side of the screen, somebody's overtaken somebody, and it's the person we knew 4 laps ago was close to somebody else. And we'll wait for the replay now, and that's what would happen. Whereas the last 2 races, it's been, oh, those guys are close, and that's what's on my screen. So you're actually seeing what is actually happening in the race. So the last 2 races have been brilliant for that. And one of the key points of it is, I mean, I've always said, if the people who are leading the race are not close to each other, you don't need to look at them, because nothing's happening. You watch where the next closest battle is. And the thing is, that is exactly what happened when Sebastian Vettel crashed. Excuse me. I get to my notes.
I think at the moment he crashed, I think was the moment where Bottas were getting past Raikkonen with all the back markers spinning.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, it's on this bit. So I'd actually written down that there was a big gaggle of cars. I've lost it now. Bear with me a second, folks. My apologies. But yeah, anyway, they were focusing on, like James says, they were focusing on a gaggle of cars, and we didn't actually see Vettel crash out live. Well, we kind of did. We saw
the last few moments of his car before it hit the barrier.
And that to me is a sign of a broadcast team that are going, right, follow the action, guys, but somebody else is sat there keeping an eye on the leaders and what's happening. And somebody is literally in the space of a split second has gone, get on Vettel. No, get on Vettel. They put the camera on and bang, he's into the wall. That for me is a broadcast team that is on the ball. And that's what they're getting paid to do, and that's what we want to see. And okay, we haven't seen the whole incident to begin with, but that's what you'd expect because you're watching the action. So then you get the replay of what happened, and I must admit, I know, Paul, you said you want to see crashes. That was probably one of the shittest crashes you'll ever see, but it had such a dramatic effect. I mean, like, if you watch that and go, well, why would James whoop at that crash? It wasn't a very good one, but it's all of the effect of it.
Yeah, well, I think it was the fact that he'd all race bitched and moaned about, I'm faster, I can go so much quicker, let me in front of my teammate, do you see what's happening to the tyres? He finally gets his wish and he's out in front and then he fucking crashes.
Yep. But not only that, the fact that in the last race we goes, oh, we beat them on their own ground, and now this week in Germany he does that.
Yeah, it were like as if, I know I'm not a very religious person. I'm not a very.
That's not what Vicky says. She always says you're screaming, "Oh God."
Yeah, that's usually when I've forgot to do a job.
Yeah. Oh God, that twat! He's not done it again.
He's not washed up. But yeah, I think that were kind of a bit of. They were at the end of that race in. At the end of the race in Britain, there were really no need for him to go, oh, we've beat them on their own turf. You know, that was kind of like a bit of a cheap move, you know. But then Mercedes-Benz once again did the signature move of they finished 1-2 and then they fucking went side by side around circuits as if to say, yeah, we fucking did you up. They didn't have to say, oh, we beat them on their own turf or out like that.
Yeah.
They you know, to wind Vettel up. They just did that, which will probably like stuck in his mind if you watch.
I mean, that's the thing. You spotted that. I spotted that. And if I spotted that, you can guarantee Ferrari did. Now,
I didn't.
You didn't know, but I mean, basically, to put it into perspective, I mean, it's something that we brought up at Monza last year. Ferrari and Monza, the two go hand in hand. Ferrari is Italy, Monza is Italy. Ferrari should do well in that circuit, if nowhere else. Well, last year Mercedes battered them. They finished 1-2, and on their slow down lap coming back to the pits, both Mercedes drivers basically drove side by side all the way back to the pits, as though to say we're 1 and 2. And not only that, because they were going slow side by side, they held up everybody behind them, one of them being a Ferrari, right? So just to rub it in their noses. Last week in Silverstone, the Ferrari wins, right? Or 2 weeks ago, Ferrari wins, and it was Sebastian Vettel, the shell that crashed out this week. And he, after the race, goes, yeah, we beat them on the home ground, because Mercedes, although it's German, their base is in England, and Lewis Hamilton is English. So this week, when Vettel fucks up, crashes out, Hamilton wins, Bottas's teammate is second. It's in Mercedes' actual home ground, but Vettel's home ground, they do the same. They come back into the pits side by side, as though to say, well, yeah, as James said, we don't need to say anything. We'll just drive side by side, finishing 1 and 2. There's a lot of sneakiness going on in Formula
So,
1.
but that's it, because it's not an actual because it's not an actual public statement, but it's a visual,
Yeah.
and it's something that lasts a lot longer in your memory than somebody going, "Oh, we beat him on their home turf." That's a throwaway line.
Yeah.
That visual of them two going around the circuit really slowly together, blocking the entire road,
Yeah.
sticks in your head because they did it for about a full minute.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is
So
as
the
well,
cameras were just on them.
the photos of Vettel losing his temper after crashing his car, they'll last forever. Added with the photos of both Mercedes cruising side by side 1 and 2 will last forever.
Yeah. I mean, when I saw him fucking kicking gravel after he got out of his car, I was fucking I were in stitches. Like,
I did laugh. I mean, I'm not a Vettel fan anyway, but I did laugh. Now, just to cover a couple of other points, Haas had their best ever qualifying on the Saturday, and had a very well. One of them had a very good result. Grosjean, as I mentioned, gained 5 places in the last few laps to finish where he did. Now, I know you've slated Grosjean a bit recently, James. His teammate, though, he was another driver that gambled for the intermediate tyres, backfired, dropped him out of the points, got beat by his teammate.
I think that's another one where he was just lucky.
Maybe. He'll crash out next race. Go on, Paul, it sounds like you're going to say something.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't say anything.
Okay.
I was just thinking, Grosjean had like pitted under the safety car. I'm wondering if them cars in front had not pitted under the safety car. You know that he because it's just strange that he can randomly pick off 5 people.
I think he pitted. He did pit quite late. Let's see, because he came out. Because what I noticed as well was when drivers were pitting, if they were coming out near traffic, and this was another thing. I'm going on about the broadcast again, but it's because it's important. Maybe not for Paul. He's probably getting bored of me by now. But when cars go into the pits, it's not an exciting situation, right? When they come out of the pits and there's cars next to them, that's an exciting situation. And they were catching that on the broadcast, because I actually wrote down, I know I wrote it down because I read it a little while ago. I just need to find it. I've got so many fucking notes. When Grosjean pitted, I will find it. Maybe I won't find it, but I'm trying to. Okay, I can't find it as someone's trashing something. But anyway, Grosjean, go on.
Vicky's just got an ice cream.
Oh.
She's telling me, oh. I can clear off?
Yeah, yeah. You're done with James. You can fuck off.
Bloody hell.
Has Vicky seen my comment on the picture she put on your Facebook the other day?
Yeah. I can't clear off. I've got Bella on top of me. She's heavy.
Okay, I'm having one of those situations where I know exactly what I'm looking for, but I know I've written it down, but I just can't see it. I can't see the wood for the trees. But anyway, yeah. Grosjean did pit. He came out in a bunch of traffic, but it did allow him to attack later on. So Grosjean's had a very good race, I think. As much as you think he was lucky, I think he had a very good race.
I'm looking for it.
This is the moment where James gets bollocked. But one thing I will say as well, though, James. I mean, I know Paul has said that quite often he just sees it as cars going round a racetrack, and it's very easy to look at it that way. But did you feel that there was a lot more action going on over the rest of the field, James, this race?
Yeah. The one more. I still got to say, if it hadn't been for rain, it probably would have been a very, very similar race to Silverstone, where Hamilton's having to fight his way through the field, but really nobody's giving him any resistance because he's lapping 3 seconds a lap quicker than everybody. So
yeah,
the rain kind of just spiced that front battle up a bit more than it normally would do. I think it would have been a pretty boring race without the rain.
Yeah, I think you're right. Daniel Ricciardo, is he got to be thinking about changing team?
I said this other week. I said I think he might go to McLaren, even though they're shit. The fact that Red Bull, I don't know whether it's just the installation or what it is, but that car's just so fucking unreliable, especially his. It's ridiculous.
I mean, I'd be thinking. I mean, Paul, if you've got any questions about this, go for it. But I'd be thinking, if I was Ricardo, I'd be thinking, this Renault car I'm driving at the minute is unreliable as fuck, and we're going to Honda next year that is historically worse. I don't want to drive that shit.
Yeah, that's what I'd be thinking as well. I'd be like, no matter what, yeah. So you might have a vision in your head of the year 2021 as being a bit of a, I can't wait for it to come soon enough. But you can't hang around. You can't. If he hangs around in Red Bull waiting for 2021, more than likely another team's going to find an advantage, and then that's going to be another year. It's not guaranteed that a certain team's going to be able to win.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think like Ocon going to Williams now might be a good time to go to Williams, because you've got a bit of time to get used to people, and then they can improve.
And as well,
sorry, go on, James.
No, go on, Paul. Go on, Paul.
Sorry. I was just going to say, talking of drivers wanting to race for this, driving now for this team, wanting to go to this team. Is it like football where they say we will put in a bid for this driver, or is it a case of I'm this good now I can choose, or how does it work with sort of drivers moving around teams? Who makes that decision ultimately?
Ultimately, it's the team. It is a lot like football in a way, except for they don't have to pay the other teams unless, for example, Valtteri Bottas, who's Lewis Hamilton's teammate now, he had recently signed a new contract with the Williams team. Nico Rosberg all of a sudden decides he's going to retire, that his seat's now available. Mercedes go, well, the person we want is Valtteri Bottas, he's just signed a new contract. They approach Williams and say, look, we want your driver and we're willing to pay you compensation for his contract. So they pay a fee and he joins them as a team. So in a football sense it works a similar way. And also drivers can be loaned to other teams in a very similar way as well as football. But it's not always that same way, because sometimes, for example, Lewis Hamilton, he's just signed a new contract with Mercedes. He would have been perfectly within his rights to say to Mercedes, look, if you want to offer me a new contract, I'll be interested, but I do want to go and have a word with Ferrari, with Red Bull, with other teams and see if they're interested in taking me. He'd be perfectly within his rights to do that. Now, he has come out this weekend and said it's the first time he's ever really done contract renegotiations where he's turned around to a team and gone, look, I'm not looking at going anywhere else, so if you want to offer me a new contract, I'm willing to take it as long as everything's how I want it to be. So it's kind of like, yes, it's like football, but there are negotiations that take place as to like, okay, how much money, what bonuses, what sponsorships are we going to have, and all that kind of stuff.
But yeah, really, apart from if somebody's already in a contract, usually a driver will sign a. The worst statement you ever get is when somebody says it's a multi-year deal.
Yeah.
That could mean anything between fucking 2 and 8. You know what I mean? So basically, there's no worse than that. But yeah, pretty much. I think the only driver who's ever said I'm on a race-to-race basis was Senna near the end of his career. Were basically saying, "Give me £1 million and I'll race for you." Or, something balmy to that effect.
No, that was Mansell, wasn't it?
It might have been both of them, to be fair, because they were both good.
Well, Senna, you may be part right. In his last year at McLaren, He had previously wanted to get out of McLaren to go to Williams because they had the better car, and he didn't hide the fact that he was trying to leave McLaren to go to Williams, so he may have been a bit more demanding on that one. That last year may have been more expensive for McLaren, but yeah. Okay, I'm just sort of like clearing through some of my notes. A lot of it we've talked about anyway. You mentioned a little bit about Ricciardo. You reckon he should go to McLaren anyway. Are you sure? Because Alonso wasn't very good this weekend, and Van Dorn was slowest in every practice session, every qualifying session of the one he took part in, and was shit slowest in the race. I mean, I made a note on lap 35, Van Dorn out, going slow. I had to add to that note a little later on. No, he's not out, he's just shit.
but this is it. Danny Ricciardo knows he's good, and yeah, McLaren might spend another year being utter dog shite, but there's no way on earth. I mean, it's been going on for a while now. It's been going on since Lewis Hamilton left McLaren, so it's nearly a full 6 years of utter shit going downwards. But Danny Ricciardo probably knows in his heart of hearts there's no way on earth that a company as big as McLaren, with that many resources and that many people that want to fucking win, there's no way on earth they'll stay there for long.
Yeah.
This is probably the longest 6 years that McLaren have had without being anywhere near the front. And it'd be a bold... luckily, I mean, for Fernando Alonso, he's fucking desperate for a third title. And he'll... Basically, because he's fucked off everybody in the paddock, apart from Renault, McLaren's all he's left with. So he's kind of shot himself in the foot, really. Yeah. But Danny Ricciardo's that young that he could be at McLaren until it gets back to the way it should be. So I'd be tempted to go with that, because I think that this is my personal view. I think if Red Bull were to get to a point where they're dominant and they're back out where they used to be, I've got a funny feeling that Red Bull would prefer Max Verstappen to win a title than they would Danny Ricciardo. And I don't know why that is, but I've just got a funny gut feeling.
Well, it's a little bit like in Red Bull there is no number one and number two driver, but when Vettel and Webber were racing together, Webber realised he was the number two and Vettel was the number one, because that's how the team portrayed it. And that's similar to what Ricciardo's had to go through with Verstappen. I feel, even though I think Ricciardo's the better driver. So I've been having a quick look through some of my notes as well. I mean, Van Dorn, there's a possibility of him trying to look at a move to, I think it's Sauber. Now, Sauber is a team we've mentioned before who have, I mean, they've done better than Leicester did with the Premier League to a degree, even though they haven't won anything. But Sauber are a team now where if you're an up-and-coming driver, that's a team you want to get into, because they're moving places, for definite. Yeah, just having a sort of quick flash through some of my notes. Most of the stuff we have sort of touched on, apart from you've mentioned a couple of times, James, about when the rain came. And what I will say is, Paul, if you haven't seen the race and you're going to watch bits of it, the bit where the rain came out, one of the reasons why James would have got so excited and I get so excited is, yeah, it brings a lot of carnage and chaos, and it did. I don't know if you noticed it, James. For example, Bottas, when Bottas got past Raikkonen, it's because of what the cars ahead of them were doing that got so bunched up in the rain and were struggling that it just caused absolute chaos.
Yeah, and then it caught them forcing Perez were on grass, spinning around, making his pink car brown. But yeah, I think the main thing for me is the Formula 1 cars are designed for dry circuits. They're never designed with rain in mind.
Yeah.
And all it takes is a little bit of moisture on circuit, and then cars become almost fucking undrivable, but it's fun to watch because you're like, well, now we'll see some action because I mean, Vettel crashed. It was probably the slowest crash you'll ever see.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He was probably driving as slow as he thought that it was for that corner. And all he had to do was downshift one extra gear, lock the rear tyres, and he spun off and he's like thinking, fucking hell, how much slower do I need to go around that corner? That was probably what he was thinking in his head.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like, the only way I can describe it, Paul, is in a Formula 1 car. I mean, I haven't driven a Formula 1 car other than on games and stuff. But the only way I can describe it is like when it's fucking really icy and you're going down a road and you're kind of like, I think I've got enough grip, or shit, I am. And it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
Anything can happen at any moment.
But and the thing is, that's what brings the excitement to it. So, I mean, seeing Vettel crash was a surprise to me, but at the same time, it was brilliant. The effect it has on the championship, because now Lewis Hamilton is leading the championship by about 10 points. Mercedes have now overtaken Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship. The lead of the Drivers' Championship has, I mean, there's been a few occasions this year where Vettel would have thought his title fight is over. And then Hamilton has a problem, and now Hamilton thinks his title fight is over, and it keeps swapping and swapping, and it's not going to go down. Well, this season it could go down in history as one of the most topsy-turvy seasons in a long time. It isn't going to go down in history as one of the most exciting in terms of action, but in terms of emotion, it maybe could, because of that. Yeah, I'm gonna win. No, I'm fucking not. Yeah, I'm gonna win. No, I'm fucking not. And that, it may bring a different perspective to the sport, but they've still got to bring that action back. And that's something that I think for anyone that may be getting interested or potentially interested in getting into Formula 1, now is a kind of a very difficult time to get into it. But if you can start watching now and wait and see what happens in the future, if the future's bright, then it's worth the time
orange.
now. Yeah, it could
orange.
be.
But yeah, I think as well, Paul, back in 2009, Ross Brawn basically purchased what was left of Honda for £1 and basically on a shoestring budget used that car to win the World Championship in 2009.
Yeah.
With Jenson Button. He's basically sold that company, which has now become Mercedes-Benz. It was Braun GP for a year, which is now Mercedes-Benz, which is so dominant, like with Ferrari at the moment. He's basically sold that back in 2012, 2013. And basically had about 3 or 4 years just to himself, just to go get away from F1 for a bit. And now that Bernie Ecclestone basically sold the rights to Formula 1 to this new American company called Liberty Media, with if you saw a picture of the bloke that now owns Formula 1, he just looks like the Monopoly man, like the hugest tash you've ever seen. But he looks like I don't know the man, but he looks like he seems like a decent bloke.
Yeah. Apart from getting rid of grid girls.
Yeah. But now, basically Ross Brawn's been rehired to basically shape the sport for the future. And really, I think in a way, looking at the cars of this year, there was no better time for him to come in to change things, because Formula 1 were probably going to get to a point where you would have 0 overtakes per race.
And you'd have 0 viewers.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully in the future, it should get more and more. I mean, with the things like social media, I mean, okay, you take us for example. Okay, I made a little bit of a joke throughout this podcast about Lucas's comment and apologising when we've talked about gaming. But, I mean, we're only a small podcast and we don't do this for anybody else other than ourselves. But we do listen to what people might say. If somebody has an idea, we might use it. Now, a company like Liberty Media and the FIA that run Formula One, the social media network that they have is vast. And okay, a lot of comments that will be on their things might be from Hamilton fanboys or Vettel fanboys or whatever, but there will have been a theme over the last number of years, which is there's no action, there's no action, there's no action. And if there's no action, there's nothing for people to watch. Now, I tell you what, Paul, if to really spice your interest in Formula One, right, I happened to fall upon a race a couple of days ago. I sat at my computer and I was working on some stuff on my computer, and I'd watched, I think it was qualifying on Saturday, right? And I still had Sky on the computer while I was doing other stuff. It was just for background noise. And then I happened to realise that they were replaying the German Grand Prix from the Nürburgring in 2011, right? Now, me, Steve and James, in the little bit of talking of Formula One that we did on last week's podcast, we talked about the Hockenheimring, which is where we just raced, being not very good for overtaking. There's one place, turn 6, you can overtake. We then also talked about Nürburgring, which is the other place in Germany that has hosted Grand Prix, and we talked about how many places you can overtake on that track, and it turns out it's pretty much every single corner. So I'm sat at my computer, right, working. I'm not even watching this 2011 race. I'm listening to it. And what I hear is the lights go out and away they go. And for 2 hours, well, hour and 40 minutes, it was non-stop. Oh my God, he's overtaken him, and he's overtaken him, and now he's overtaken him, and he's overtaken him, but because he's overtaken him, he's attacking him back. And that's all it was for an hour and 40 minutes. Non-stop action, overtake, overtake, overtake. And things are like, and James, this might surprise James a little bit. I mean, he knows the Nürburgring and he loves it. When they brought in the DRS, the drag reduction system, to aid overtaking, when they went to the Nürburgring, they had the option of using the DRS system on the main straight, the start-finish straight at the Nürburgring, but they turned around and said, you know what, we don't need it because the possibility to overtake is good enough there anyway. And when they said that just before the race started, I thought, yeah, that don't sound right. It was right. They didn't need the DRS down the main straight into turn 1. But now, if you haven't got DRS, you're not overtaking the car ahead.
Yeah, that's it. The cars have now become so
stale that, let's say for example that Paul, you were following me, like, so let's say you were like driving around a racetrack and you were technically about 5 seconds behind me and we're bombing round about 100 mile an hour. Yep. Once you get within about 4 to 3 seconds of my car, imagine them turning into a corner and it just doesn't steer the way you have felt, because the front wing is basically not working, because the wake off my car is affecting your front wing so much that you can't turn the car as much as you want to.
Yeah.
So basically, if you get too close to a car in front of you now, you can't overtake.
Well, here's an analogy for you. I've just thought about this, so I don't know if it's going to work. It's a little bit like, imagine James being in a nightclub, right? It is a single man, right? He's not a bad-looking fella, and James is trying to chat up a few birds, right? Now a little bit behind him is Tom Cruise, right? Now, as Tom Cruise gets closer and closer to James, all the women are interested in him, right? They're all interested in him. They're all interested because he's a good-looking guy. He's a midget, but he's a good-looking guy and he's rich. So the women are interested in him. He's got a good vibe going on. But then he gets so close to the back of James that women in front of James can't see him behind James. So they've got no interest in him whatsoever. They're only interested in James.
I mean, in real life, that would actually happen, but yeah.
Admittedly, if we ever see a picture now of James with Tom Cruise behind him, I'd be surprised.
I'll Photoshop him in as my best mate.
Okay.
I was just going to say that. I'm going to
Yeah.
make that picture.
I've just thought of a new commentary name for a new commentator for you. Bomb Cruise.
Bum Cruise.
Actually, no, don't use Bomb Cruise because that may get ISIS watching you on YouTube instead. You don't.
No,
want
but
that.
it could be
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Ireland.
It could be. But yeah, so
Tom Bruce.
Tom
James
Bruce.
Watt.
Hey, that's a good one. Okay, the last thing that I'm really going to mention about from my notes really is mentioned a while ago about the safety car. There's another race that's been affected by safety car, which Paul, you might not know. Pretty much every race this season has been affected by a safety car situation. Now, obviously, explain a little bit about what the safety car does. So I'm interested to get James's thoughts on what I'm going to mention, but also your thoughts, Paul, as someone new to Formula One. When the safety car comes out, the safety car basically waits until the leader is behind them. So it'll let cars go past it until the leader of the race is behind them, and then everybody has to wait behind the safety car. After a while, they will let cars that have been lapped past everybody, past the safety car, and go around the track and bugger off into the distance, and then they'll restart the race. However, an interesting situation occurred at Hockenheim this weekend where when they let the lapped cars go past, it turned out that there was only the top 4 cars were right behind the safety car. Well, it was actually top 5, but Hulkenberg pitted. So now you've got the safety car, P1, P2, P3, P4 right behind it, everybody else halfway round the track trying to catch up.
Okay.
For you as a new viewer, should they wait until all the other cars have caught back up, or should they just go, well, you were a lap down, fuck off, we're racing?
Okay, I've got 2 things to raise on this subject. My personal preference would be, if you haven't earned it, should you be able to basically let the leaders lead and let the guys who are behind stay behind. If they haven't earned it, if they haven't caught up, it's their bad, tough shit basically. Following on from that, the second thing I was going to say was, again, my neighbour who's into is F1 was saying that this season, this F1 in particular, has been, it's not boring. There's been some amazing races, but he said it's been the top 6 and then everybody else.
Yep.
Like 15, 20 seconds behind the top 6.
Yep.
And he says they're almost doing what they call like a paupers league, where it's like the top 6 and that they're going for it, and then it's like they're going to do the number 1 of everybody else because they're that far behind. And he says that's not, it's good, but it's like after a while it's okay, it's top 6. What do we do to get these other guys? Yeah, it's a tough one. Yeah. What do we do to make it fairer, make it closer? But I mean, okay, I'll put it back onto you then. Are the top 6 drivers more skilled? Is there more money in it? What's going on there?
Okay. The top 6 drivers are more skilled than 99% of the rest of the drivers.
Yeah.
But the reason they're so far ahead is simply the cars. That's all it is. Now, all of the other cars on the grid have got the same engine that is in those top 6 cars, but it's the chassis, the design, the aerodynamic package with the engine that just gives them so much more speed, ability, power, and things like that. So it's a little bit like saying, okay, you got 8 Usain Bolts racing against each other. One of them, though, he's going to wear glass shoes. One's going to wear sand shoes. One's going to wear sandals. Another one's going to wear blades under his feet. So it's like they're limited and restricted in one way or another, but not by a governing body, so to speak. It's just by the nature of the sport. Mercedes, Red Bull and Ferrari have got so much money that they can spend that they do spend it on development. I mean, we mentioned on a podcast recently that a Formula 1 car costs £700 million, right? Now, 2-3 years ago there was a team called Mana Marussia. The car that they brought, like the bodywork, the chassis that they brought to race 1 was exactly the same car that they brought to race 19. Mercedes, the car that they brought to race 1, was not the same car that they brought to race 19, because it had been upgraded, it had been improved, the bodywork had been reshaped, it had new parts brought to it all the way through. It was not the same vehicle. So when you've got that rate of development, the team that brings the same car from race 1 to race 19 has never got a chance to compete. Now, in that era, a couple of years ago, that team also had a Ferrari engine, but it was from the year before, that was never improved. So they get a double whammy of 2 steps behind, basically. Now,
double whammy of utter shite.
Exactly.
So they ain't got enough money to develop the car, so they can't go any quicker than what they are.
Yeah.
And then they've got an engine that's fucking going to be exactly the same at the start of the season to the end of the season.
Yeah.
Plus
whatever the other teams improve their engine by.
Yeah, the Works Ferrari has got clearly a newer engine because it's the current year engine, but they're also developing that engine to make it faster and faster and faster, while you're all just sat there with the same piece of shit.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that the FIA this is one thing I'm thinking Ross Brawn brought in. One of the things that the Formula One have done for this year is they have gone, hang on a minute, folks. Right. If teams want to use a Mercedes engine or a Ferrari engine or a Renault engine, it has to be the same engine that the main engine manufacturer is using. So the engine that is in the Mercedes is the same engine that is in the Williams, the Force India, and so on. It's not last year's engine. And if the Mercedes engine gets updated, then so does everybody else's. And Ferrari, they were happy to sell their engines to other teams as long as it was the previous years, but because the regulation has been changed, they have had no choice but to give their customers the same engine. And what that has done is that has meant that Haas, who used the Ferrari engine, have been much more competitive, but their bodywork isn't as good, so they're kind of best of the rest at the moment. Force India, who've got a Mercedes engine, they're quick, they're good, and they're close to best of the rest because their bodywork's not as good as Mercedes, but they're close to Haas. You got Renault, who it's their own engine, but their car's not very good, so they're kind of in the mix a little bit. But then you've got a team like Sauber, who last year, the only time you ever saw them on TV was when they were being lapped by the leader, which would happen, there'd be 2 or 3 laps down every race. Now, they're actually fighting for best of the rest. And they've got drivers you got one driver who could be the next Ferrari guy, and another one who shouldn't be in Formula One. But they now have gone from being dead last, haven't got a chance, to actually, you know what, they're scoring points now. And that is exciting, that's good for Formula One. And that came simply from that regulation change. Now, when it comes to the bodywork side of things, as James mentioned about the dirty air and you get close to someone you can't turn, one of the rules that Ross Brawn is wanting to change is how much bodywork elements you can have. So you look at a front wing now, you've got a bottom piece and then 1 million pieces attached to it. Well, the rules are changing so that you'll basically have 3 pieces to your front wing and that is it, to reduce the effect that the cars create. So hopefully the racing will get closer next year, and that gap between the top 6 and everybody else should get smaller, but also the gap between the top 6 should get smaller as well.
And the only other thing I'd add to that is, as well, with the front wings, they're not allowed to put any sort of aerodynamic device to try and move the airflow around the front tyres, because the front tyres are pretty much the biggest thing that creates drag. So now on the Formula 1 car, and it's been pretty much this way since 2008, but front wings are quite big, obviously, but they have like these elements just in front of the front tyres that try and direct the air either around the tyre or in towards the centre of the car, they're completely banned. So hopefully, ideally, that should be a stepping stone to get rid of DRS. Now I'll touch on that in a bit, but it should be a step in the right direction that creates drag, so that automatically, if you get up behind another car, and let's say you're in a straight line, the air hitting that car, there's no
effect. I mean, I think probably the easiest way to perhaps explain it, and I'm going to part use something that the Sky commentator Crofty has said is, okay, we've all done it, whether as kids or as adults, when you're in a car and it's a hot day, you got your window, you put your arm out the window and the wind blows it all over the place, right? And that's obviously aerodynamic effect, it's wind effect. So you imagine putting your hand out the window, right, and like clenching a fist with it, right, and aiming your knuckles into the direction you're travelling. Right, the wind is going to hit your knuckles, your fist, and it's hitting a blunt area, and it's going to try and push your fist back. If you now put your other hand out the window and put it at an angle so that the wind hits your hand on an angle, all the wind goes over your fist and doesn't touch the fist. Now your fist is free to move. That's basically what a front wing on a Formula 1 car does now. It directs all of the air over the fist. It directs it over the wheel. Now in the future, that angle of the hand isn't going to be there, so the wind is going to be hitting the tyre. Now the reason that that's different is because that's what will be happening anyway. When you catch up to somebody, that effect is not going to change. Whereas now, because the wind is being directed over the fist, when you catch up to a car, the wind no longer moves the way you want it to, so it still affects the fist, and that's a negative effect. So basically you take that out of the equation, so when you catch up to someone, the effect doesn't change and give you more chance to drive, race and attack. There you go, in simplest terms I could give.
Can you repeat that, Dave?
No. Put your fist out the window, see what happens. If you break your arm, don't blame me. Just imagine, I put my fist out the window, spent 4 hours in fucking hospital. But what I will say, when we was talking about the safety car, I like the fact that Paul said, well, if they haven't earned the right to catch up, then fuck them. And you're right. I mean, I'm of the mindset of you're a lap down, that doesn't mean you should be allowed to just unlap yourself, go ahead and try and catch back up.
Yeah.
And
imagine you were in a running race, and suddenly and you were the winner, you were winning, or in the top 2 or 3, and suddenly some guy just ran out and said, "Hang on a minute, slow down, guys."
Yeah.
And you were the top 3, and said, "Just let everybody catch up a second," and then keep going. Suddenly, you'd be like, "Hang on a fucking minute, what's these?" You know, you'd be pissed off.
Yeah. You would, and it's one of the reasons why they brought in the virtual safety car, because the virtual safety car basically slows everybody down while keeping the gaps between the cars the same, right? Which is a good thing until teams realise, well, you know what, if you actually pit under a virtual safety car, we can gain time here. So that's something that's going to get looked at. So the virtual safety car is a better system. With the safety car, though, it is used for dangerous situations, like where Vettel went off and crashed. It then became possible that if anybody else did exactly the same at that point, they would be hitting people trying to recover his car. So you can understand a safety car coming out. But you are right that by allowing everybody else to catch up, it advantages them and disadvantages those that were leading. And I actually was thinking that they would just restart the race and go, well, everyone else is around the other side of the track, fuck them, we can go. But annoyingly, the safety car was out for 5 laps, and at the moment, by the time they said, right, the safety car's coming in, the cars were coming into the last couple of corners and the rest of the pack had managed to catch them up. And that, for me, I must admit, did feel a little bit wrong.
Like Paul says, I mean, yeah, it might create more action, but at the same time, It's like, well, have you earned the right to be there? No.
Yeah.
So fuck off then.
And not only that, if you're meant to be going slow behind the safety car because of a danger on the edge of the circuit, by allowing cars to unlap themselves means either A, the circuit is now clear and we're actually ready to race, or B, the circuit isn't clear but you're allowing cars to go faster than the safety car is, and that's how they're able to catch up, which would that's against the idea of having a safety car. So for me, you line up behind the safety car, picks up the leader, everybody stays where the fuck they are. If you're a lap down, tough fucking shit, mate. Right, that's where you were beforehand. Right, tough shit. Okay, everybody else has bunched up, but for you, tough shit. Once the track is clear, go race. If you're a lap down and you've got to pull over to let other people behind you pass because you're now in their way, so be it. Tough shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
go on,
Paul.
Jim.
No, go on, Paul.
Putting something to you two then, as experienced F1 viewers, fans, whatever. We seem to all agree on the fact that if you're behind and you want to catch up, the first safety car comes out and you have the chance to catch up. Tough shit. You shouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
On another flip side of the coin, shall we say, how do you feel that F1 is, if it is from a fan's point of view, the same 6 drivers going for the top and everybody else is behind? Does that get boring that it's the same 6 drivers? Is that...
Oh yeah, it gets very fucking boring to a point where I last week's podcast I were just like not even interested in doing it, so I was that fucking bored by Formula 1.
Yeah.
The only thing that could get me through it was talking about video games because I was that bored of it.
I mean, the prospect of watching this weekend, the weekend's race that we just had, was not one that excited me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, does that raise the point though again that if we've talked about, well, you're behind, so fuck you can't catch up, but then it goes back to the point of, well, it's going to be the same 6 people then.
It is, but
how do you juggle the two?
Even if you let the others catch up, it only takes a couple of laps for those front 6 to fuck off again.
Yeah. Okay.
So for me, I don't have a problem with the front 6 being better than everybody else, as long as those front 6 can fight each other. If those front 6 can't fight each other, that's when it goes from, okay, a bit boring to this is depressing. So, I mean, we've discussed on our podcast about things that the governing bodies could do, whether it be like in touring cars. If you get pole position in touring cars, you then get given a weight ballast to make you a little bit slower, which means everybody behind you has got a chance of attacking you. If you win the race, you get some weight ballast. So you have like 3 races in a day, right? So if you qualify on pole, you get added weight. If you win a race, you get some more added weight. So if you happen to get pole in the win, you've got a lot of weight. But then they also do a reverse grid for their 3rd race. So if you finish in 8th, you actually get qualified bonus to pole or something like that. So they mix things up by adding disadvantages to the faster cars. And that's something that Formula 1 could bring in. But there's too many fucking lawyers involved and too much money involved for, I think, the governing body to get away with that, which is why they have to go down the route of saying, right, our rules are going to be like this, which is what's going to help everybody. I mean, to put into perspective as well, I don't know if you've heard the story recently about Wembley Stadium. Right, I know it's football, not Formula 1, but the Football Association in England are considering selling Wembley Stadium, right, for £500 million, I think it is. No, sorry, £500 million to basically raise £70 million over the next number of years, right? A year over the next number of years. Now, some people just think, well, that's not a bad idea. It's a good way of making money. But Gary Neville has come out and basically he's gone to appear ahead in front of the people that run the Football Association and basically said, well, hang on a moment, you're saying that you need to raise money to help fund football in England. Now, not necessarily the Premier League, but lower roots football. The Football Association needs to raise £70 million a year. And the way you're looking at doing that is by selling a national asset. Whereas if you do that, okay, it's a short-term fix, you sell it for 500 million, you got that 500 million, but what you're going to do after that? You're going to sell the next asset. Whereas instead, what you could do is say, right, the team that wins the Premier League earns £180 million, and the team that finishes last in the Premier League earns £110 million. If you take off £3.5 million from every single team, the top team still earns £176.5 million, and the bottom team earns £106.5 million. Still a lot of money, and you raise your £70 million a year without selling anything. Easy, you can do that, and Formula 1 could do that as well. The pay structure in Formula 1 to the teams is even worse. The top teams get hundreds and hundreds of millions, the bottom teams get pittance in comparison. So if they spread it out in a fairer way, the bottom teams have more money to spend on their cars, which means their cars can go faster and compete more with the higher teams.
Yeah, just to put it in perspective, Paul, because you won't know this. Ferrari, just for turning up at the beginning of the season, already get paid some like fucking mental, like 200 million just for saying that they'll be there.
Jesus. Just for turning up.
Just for turning up.
Yeah.
And then that's not including prize money.
Or TV money.
So really it's about it's the pull of the... If you were like a shit team, throw me a shit team. I don't know.
At the minute, Williams.
The pink card.
But the pink card's an interesting one, right? Because the pink car, Force India, they are actually the best example of a new team that's come into Formula 1 on a very small budget and done very well.
Let's say, for example, Paul, you were an investor.
Mm-hmm.
For every pound you put in to a Formula 1 team, Force India would probably give you the best results.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were to spend that clearly with Lance Stroll's money at Williams, you might not get fuck all for it.
Yeah.
I'm out.
You might get a Tommy Hilfiger t-shirt and that's it. Or a Tommy Hilfiger t-shirt. Yeah. It is so fucking knocked off, it's not even spelt right. So, I mean, to put into perspective as well, is like, okay, Ferrari, they get paid millions just for turning up. So do McLaren. But that's because they've been in Formula 1 for such a long time. It's like a bonus for them. Now, similar to football, you get X amount of millions for finishing first, second, third, fourth, all the way down to last, right? So the better you do, the more money you earn. But if you come in as a new team, let's say us three decided, right, we've all managed to swindle our way to £100 million, let's go into Formula 1. Well, to begin with, 100 million ain't going to be enough. But
we get a car and a half ready.
Yeah, but we'll kind of get there, right? We would not see a return on that money, all right, unless we were able to finish in the top 5 of the Constructors' Championship, and even then would probably only break even. So you're kind of on a back foot to begin with. So Haas, for example, they've sort of teamed up with Ferrari and using a lot of Ferrari parts, but they can also afford it because they've got a massive brand in America, a sporting brand in America. McLaren, they finished so badly the last few years that they've made hardly any money in prize money in Formula 1. So they're kind of up shit creek. But they've got a big enough brand and a big enough company that they can kind of cope with it. But teams like Manor, who have come and failed because of loss of money, Caterham came and failed, turned into Lotus, that turned into Renault. Who else was the HRT came and failed because they come in, they spend money, they don't earn enough money back, and they're bankrupt before they know it. So that's kind of the way Formula 1 has been recently.
HRT, isn't that what you take when you're on the menopause?
It used to be, yeah. It's been banned now.
Yeah. Oh.
But yeah. Well, I say banned. It was taken off the shelves, but people that have been on it for so long were still able to keep taking it, from what I gather.
Yeah, HRT. It were I don't
hormone
understand why-
replacement treatment.
No, I don't know what it stood for in.
No, that's what the
Formula
tablet
One.
was.
It were just this Spanish Formula One team.
It was the Hispanic racing team. But interestingly, James, right? You know the documentary I told you to watch about Derek Warwick? If you watch the Karun Chandok one, that'll give you an interesting insight into the HRT Formula One team. Because the HRT Formula One team didn't actually exist, I think, 2 weeks before the start of the season.
Fucking hell.
Or something daft like that. Watch the Karun Chandok documentary. If Derek Warwick opened your eyes, Karun Chandok will. But yeah, there's the Derek Warwick.
I thought you were going to say something else then.
No.
I was going to say, if Derek Warwick opened your eyes, Karen Chandok will open your eyes.
It might do, you never know. It depends on what you're into. But yeah, I mean, those documentaries are fascinating for some of the stuff to do with that. Yeah, very interesting. But I mean, there are teams that have come and made a success of it, and there's teams that have come and failed. Force India is one that have come and made a success of it, but could be on the verge of going bankrupt. And interestingly, we talked on our podcast a few months ago about there's been 2 or 3 occasions this season where buyers have been lined up to take over Force India, and we've been expecting an announcement of the deal to have happened, but it's not been happening. Something's fallen through on it.
I think investors are waiting to the point where the team's worth fuck all, and then they're going to try and pick it up for hardly all.
Quite possibly. Because let's face it, a team that has gone into administration is going to be cheaper than a team that hasn't.
Yeah.
Because you'd get better rates on... Because basically, a team goes into administration, when you buy it, you'd basically be buying their debt as well. So you'd get a better rate on the debt. So because you're paying the debt, your outlay for buying the team would be a lot less as well, because you go, well, the team might be worth 500 million, but I've got to pay 400 million in debt, so the team's actually only worth 100 million.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, okay, on to my last couple of notes about the race. I mean, I must admit, I really enjoyed the race. So Hamilton got his 44th win, which was good, but my final notes were Hamilton wins, great drive, or OP car helped. I think it was a bit of both, to be honest. Bottas, great job, team player. Kimi Raikkonen, good stuff, was a good race. Hulkenberg, very good race, finishing P5. Haas, Grosjean did well, and my last note was not a bore fest, thank fuck.
Yeah. I think that race needed to happen because I think last week after the Silverstone Grand Prix, a race that I usually really enjoy, I was almost at the point of just saying, you know what, fuck it, I'm not watching Formula 1.
Yeah.
And that was the race I needed, where I was like, actually, it's fucking reignited a little spark where you're like, you know what, this is why I watch it.
Yeah, the thing is though, we go to Hungary next, and there's gonna be no fucking overtaking there.
Let's hope it rains. Come on.
we can definitely hope.
Bring the sprinklers.
Yeah. We've got one more thing to do, James. That I've got scheduled to do, and that is we need to see how we got on with our predictions that we made for the race.
Well, if you want to know, Paul, I predict what's going to happen, and does it fucking happen? Does it fuck?
Hey, you know what though, James? You actually scored points this week.
Way,
well, I say points.
I normally say that I'm like an F1 expert, and then we come to these predictions, and I usually get fuck all.
Yeah. Well, you know, the thing is though, something very special has happened actually. It's just not for you, James, unfortunately, and it's not for me either. Okay, so I'm going to quickly run through the predictions that we made. Okay, so the predictions we had was for pole position, winner, podium, first to crash out, what position Leclerc would finish, and a self-prediction, which is a prediction we make up ourselves. We each had different ones. Okay, so pole position, Steve went for Hamilton. He didn't get that. James went for Vettel, and Vettel got pole, so James gets a point. I went for Vettel, so I get a point as well. So well done, James.
I went for Vettel as well.
Well done. You can have minus points for being a cheeky fucker. Winner. You don't even know who Vettel is. If you don't know who Ferrari are, you don't know who Vettel is. Shell.
Yeah, he's got a girlfriend called Michelle.
Yeah. Okay, winner. Steve went for Kimi Raikkonen. James went for Vettel. So no points for you there, James. And I went for Hamilton, which I didn't think was going to happen, so I got it right. And interestingly as well, the one time where Steve doesn't say Hamilton's going to win, Hamilton won. So that worked well for me. But this is where the something special happened, James. Only one person has had this happen twice this season, and that is getting the podium 100% correct. And Steve fluked it, mainly because I said, well, you've not picked Hamilton as a winner, so I'm going to pick Hamilton as a winner. So he chose Hamilton to win on his podium selection, and then he went with Bottas and Kimi Raikkonen, which he managed to get absolutely spot on. So Steve flukes 3 fucking points there.
What a jammy bastard.
Yeah. You went for Vettel, Kimi, and then Hamilton. And I went for Hamilton, Vettel, and then Bottas, so no points for us there. And then to add insult to injury, with the first to crash out, Steve chose Vettel. And Vettel was the first to crash out. Although there were retirees throughout the race, Vettel was the first that crashed out. So Steve gets another point there. James, you went for Lance Stroll. As shit as he is, he didn't crash out. I went for Grosjean, and he finished in fucking 6th. Okay, Leclerc's finishing position. Steve said he would DNF. He nearly did with his pirouette, but he carried on. James, you said he'd finish 7th. I said he'd finish 8th, but he actually finished 15th, so no points for us there. Now on to the self-prediction, the bit that James gets beautifully wrong. Steve said there would be no safety car or VSC. There was a safety car. James, do you remember what yours was? Has a quick look at the picture. You said lap 1, turn 1, 3 cars would crash out in a massive pile-up.
Yeah, they were all well behaved.
They were all very well behaved for the first 2 laps. And I said that a Ferrari will have a puncture. Now, I could try and claim that Vettel did have a puncture after you hit the wall, but I don't think that'd fly. So no points for either of us on that one. Which means that James, although you've gained a point, you haven't gained enough. You're on 8. I'm on 16, earning 2 points today. Steve has earned 4 points, and that has put him on 16 as well. So it's tight at the top, but James, you're having a bit of a Williams. Yeah, you can tell because he's got dead quiet. He doesn't know what to say about that one. You still there, James?
No, he's gone for a poo.
I think he might have done.
In a minute we'll hear. Yep. Yep. Yep.
I'm back. After that, he's just so devastated at his result. But
he's sulking. Tomorrow at work, he'll just be crying on my shoulder.
if he's not sleeping, that is.
Yeah, he's probably. Wake up.
Okay, right. What we'd usually do now is we would do our predictions for this coming weekend's race, which is Hungary. Now, I don't have Steve's predictions, but I will get them off him. Although he's on holiday, I will be able to message him and get his predictions so I can write them down. What we will do as well, Paul, even though you're newish to F1, we'll get your predictions as well. Even if you don't know any names, we will accept white car, pink car, or shell as your predictions, because you never know, you might be right. And if you end up with more points than James,
I might know just enough names to get by. How many do I need to guess to sit through?
Well, it depends on which ones we do. I I wonder if James's internet's dropped out or whether he's clicked mute on by accident.
Well, mine's done it a couple of times, to be fair. He's had to bring me back in.
But,
But,
that's a good point, actually. I might need to, if he does leave, I might have to re-invite him in.
Okay.
I don't think he would be able to...
Sorry guys, I'm
there
back. Sorry, I had a bit of a technical issue.
Bit of a toilet break.
I didn't know you were calling it. I didn't know Vicky was technical.
Well, she's smarter than me. I'm not very technical.
I was going to say something then, but I'd have coughed out my water I just drank. Right, okay, James, we're on to doing our predictions for this week. I'm going to message Steve to get his predictions for the Hungarian Grand Prix that's coming up.
Right.
We can get Paul to make some predictions as well. So, James, who do you... go on.
Paul, how long do you think... Do you think Shell might crash out this week?
Okay, I'm going to go for Hamilton for number 1.
Or is that a winner, is it?
I'm going to go for Hamilton for the win.
Alright.
I'm just throwing names out here. I'm going to go for Vettel for number 2.
Okay.
And I'm going to go for Heineken for number 3.
Okay.
Not the lager, the driver. And
Heineken?
Heineken. What's he called?
Raikkonen.
Raikkonen, not Heineken.
Raikkonen.
Fucking hell.
Heineken. Well,
The one that you said. The one that you said.
I'm telling you, these drivers are getting better, Paul.
They are. Right, okay. Right, let's go through my list then, shall we? So, James, who do you think is going to get pole?
I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say Vettel.
Okay. Paul, who do you think might get pole?
Hamilton's normally a beast around that circuit, but the Ferrari just looks so good in high-speed corners.
Vettel for pole.
Okay. I'm going to go with Verstappen for pole position.
Oh.
I would go for Danny Rick, but I've got a feeling he's going to get more engine penalties. So I think it'll be Verstappen because that's a track where the Red Bull could be very good.
Yeah.
Okay, Paul reckons that Hamilton's going to win. So James, who do you think is going to win?
Who do I think is going to win? I'll say Hamilton again.
Interesting. I'd just written Hamilton as well. Okay, so podium. Paul thinks it's going to be Hamilton, Vettel, and Hakkinen. I nearly said Hakkinen. So James, your podium.
I'll probably say Hamilton, Ricciardo, Bottas. But no, Hamilton, Ricciardo, Vettel.
Interesting. I'm going to go with Hamilton, Vettel, and Max Verstappen. Okay, first to crash out. James, who do you think that might be?
Give me Raikkonen.
Okay, Paul, who do you think might be first to crash out? And if you want to just give a colour of a car, I'll accept that.
I'm going to say the pink one.
Pink one, okay. I'm going to go with
India, whatever they call it. Yeah.
Force India. Yeah. I'm going to go with Bottas. I don't know why. It's just the way I'm going to go. Okay. I've already
with the pink one, Paul. There's 2 drivers. So are we going to say?
Go on, give me the names.
Ocon, who's the Mercedes Junior driver, or we're going to say Perez, who's the Mexican idiot.
The Mexican idiot, all the way.
Okay, so Perez it is then. Okay, I wrote this down because James said it and I thought it was quite funny. The last 2 predictions we do are predictions that we make up. Basically, we can either make up a prediction that all 3 of us have to give our prediction on, or we can just make up random ones. Now, for one of them, I wrote down, will Shell crash? So the proper question is, will a Ferrari crash? So the correct answer is yes or no. So you get to predict, will a Ferrari crash? Paul?
I'm going to say no.
Okay, James?
I'm going to say yeah, because I said right, crash out.
I'm going to say yes as well, you know. I'm going to say yeah. I've got a feeling that Raikkonen might crash out, but he won't be the first. Okay, so the last prediction is one that we get to make up. So, James, any thoughts? Paul, if you got any ideas, fire away. And if any of our listeners have got any ideas for prediction, feel free to comment.
Ooh, I'm going to say the pink car's going to dig in the grass again. Wheel spin on the grass. I don't even know what that means. But yeah, James, go.
There's actually a bit of grass there.
There's quite a lot of grass there,
yeah. I'm going to say... I'm going to say at some point during the Grand Prix we're going to have rain again.
So rain in the race. We'll go for self predictions then. So rain in the race for James. Paul, you can predict anything. Do you want to stick with pink car's going to be in the grass? Bear in mind, if that is the same incident as Perez crashing out, I might not score you on it.
Ooh, I'm going to say... I don't even know. I don't know. I'm going to say Vettel's going to crash.
Oh, okay. That's that. I love the way you're thinking. Completely mindless, right? Just tell you what, Vettel is going to get pole position, right? Vettel is also going to finish second in the race. No Ferraris will crash, but Vettel will crash out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the way you could. Yeah. Do you want to stick with that, or do you want to change your mind?
Yeah, fuck it. Fuck it, I'll go with it. I don't even...
You never know, you might score a point on that one. Vettel will crash. Okay, my prediction. I'm thinking, let's go something unusual, shall we? I'm going to go with a particular corner. Turn 4. Crash.
Fast left-hander.
Yeah. Involving Grosjean.
Yeah, I can see it. You know what? I'm going to change mine from rain in the race to a driver hurting themselves so bad that they're not going to be able to compete for the next race.
Ooh. You miserable bastard. Okay, I'll take that. Right, okay, that's our predictions locked in then. So we'll find out next week how we get on with those, and I will message Steve, even though he's on holiday in Spain at the moment. I will message him tomorrow and get his predictions. And you know what, guys? I think that's just about me covered for everything I've got to do with Formula 1.
Yeah, I think that's me as well.
Yeah.
We were on about other week. We were on about Apollo 13.
Yeah.
I'm looking right now through the front window. Moon's looking so clear.
Oh, right. I know. Paul, when James invited Paul onto the podcast, Paul said that it's available till 10 o'clock. It's already 20 past 11. So if you need to get off, Paul, that's fine. I'm sure we'll be bringing the podcast to an end very soon anyway. But what I will say is, I had a very disheartening conversation with one of Steve's daughters yesterday, in that she thought that the moon landings were fake, and she has never seen Apollo 13. I couldn't believe it.
I think it's weird that you say that, because Steve said to us, he tried to back us out of watching Apollo 13 live on his podcast. I'm wondering if he's been telling his daughter, "Oh, we don't watch that because it didn't really happen."
Oh, maybe he's a skeptic. But I ended up basically giving a science lesson of the nature of space, gravity, how planets were formed, and all that kind of random stuff that I surprisingly know quite a bit about, to a girl that simply believed that we never landed on the moon. And her sister was asking, well, if Neil Armstrong was the first person to step on the moon, who was holding the camera that was videoing him climbing down the ladder? And I was like, it's a good question, but the camera was attached to the leg of the LEM. What's a LEM? The Lunar Exploration Module. Well, what's one of them? Well, lunar is moon, exploration is self-explanatory, module is the spaceship. It's the spaceship they landed on the moon with. All right.
They just invented selfie sticks about 50 years earlier than they need to do.
Yeah. Well, it's like Lily's one of the things she said. Well, we never went to the moon, and I know that because the famous picture of the Earth that's on the iPhones, the person who made it has admitted how he had to fake it. And I was like, well, yeah, of course he had to fake it. So well, that proves he didn't go to the moon then. I says, no, it's just that the technology used for that picture now didn't exist when we went to the moon, and the quality of images that were taken when we went to the moon are not good enough for people to want them now. And so what do you mean? I said, well, we have the technology to take brilliant pictures of the Earth, but nobody's been far out enough in space with that technology to take a picture. What do you mean? I said, well, we've not been to the moon for over 30 years. And she couldn't quite get her head around you'd have to be so far away to take the picture. But anyway.
Yeah, that's called common sense.
Yeah. But, I mean, even things like, well, it's got to be fake, because when they stuck the flag into the moon, it kept waving. And I ended up explaining that. Well, I thought I explained it quite well, but she still wouldn't accept that it was true. So, right, watch fucking Mythbusters. They'll teach you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
But, and watch Apollo 13.
Yeah, yeah. It is a crappy movie. I mean, it does have some parts where it's a bit dull, but I think I've said this to Paul before. But the whole, just even the whole build up to the rocket setting off and it getting out of the atmosphere, then 5 minutes are like up there with the best of cinema for me. I always sat watching that, and just to the point of getting out of the atmosphere. Like, you can't imagine being in that rocket and not thinking, I'm gonna fucking die. There's no, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Imagine being in that rocket back in the 70s.
Oh yeah.
You would have just been sat there just thinking, I'm probably going to die at any moment.
I'd have been sat there thinking, how is this going to get us to where we want to go when we can't even make cars that are fucking reliable? The thing is, though, interesting, I watched a film some years ago, and it's kind of like, it's a bit of a secret favourite of mine. It's a bit corny, it's a bit cheesy, but I saw...
Pretty Woman?
No. That's in my wank bank.
Next on the plate.
No. I don't know if either of you will have watched it. And okay, as anyone that's listening now, we have got off Formula One. I don't know how much longer we're going to be running the podcast tonight, but excuse me, I just want to mention this film. Is that I watched this film. I saw it made available again recently, and I thought, oh, it's that film. I'll watch that, and I still enjoyed it. But after I finished watching it, I had the thought of especially with the conversation I had yesterday with my niece. It did make me think. People would probably watch this film and think there's more chance of this being a true story than Apollo 13. Because when I was talking to my niece, I did think if she watched Apollo 13, she would probably be of the mindset of, well, that's made up, which it isn't. And this film, the other film, is called The Core, and it's about having to go basically drill into the Earth to the centre of the Earth, right? And people go into the centre of the Earth. And the thing is, that is not possible to do with the technology we have available. We can't go that far down. We can't even go that far down in the ocean without dying. So the chance of getting to the centre of the Earth, it's just not possible to do at the moment.
Unless Hollow Earth exists.
Unless a Hollow Earth exists, but even then, the pressure would still be so great that you'd still die.
That's true.
But this is the thing: if you've never seen the film The Core, watch it. It is a bit corny, it's a bit cheesy, but it's actually quite an interesting film. And the way it gets around the difficulties of like going to the centre of the Earth is quite good. But I could imagine people watching. I think if James watched it, he could probably agree that people nowadays could probably watch that and go, "Oh yeah, well that's more believable than fucking going to outer spaces."
Yeah, right. I'll put that on my watch list.
Yeah.
Me and Paul, you might have seen it. Me and Paul we've set up this little YouTube channel called Red Star Media.
Red Light Media.
Yeah, we're gonna start doing. We've done Jurassic World, we've done Jurassic Park. I just need to upload that to YouTube. I think we're gonna. Sorry, I think that's my body telling me to shut up. We're gonna start doing James Bond movies starting from the beginning, but we're probably going to alternate them so that each week, every other week, we do a Bond movie.
Yeah.
So that we don't get bonded out, like fatigue.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're going to start doing that. But yeah, we watched. So yeah, for one of us other movies, we might end up having a look at that The Car, 'cause I don't think I've seen that. Have you seen that, Paul?
No, I've not seen. I have heard of it, to be fair.
I think I've seen it on Netflix, but I've never clicked on it.
I can give you the main lead character in it. The guy in it is the guy that played Harvey Two-Face in the Batman movies.
Oh yeah.
In
Tommy Lee.
No, that's going back a long way. That is not that far
the
back.
More recent.
The more recent one. The one with Christian Bale as Batman. I can't remember what the guy's name is, but he's the lead man in it. The lead female in it is an actress I really like. Emily Hilary Swank.
Emily Hilary Swank.
I don't think it's Emily Hilary. I think it's just Hilary Swank. I like her because of the name, and I also find her quite attractive. She's very good in it. But also, there's another guy who's in the film, who's quite a famous actor in the recent Star Trek films. Not James's forte, I know. In the recent Star Trek films, he was Captain and then Admiral Pike. So he's in it as well. But yeah, I found it a really enjoyable film. It is pretty good. I liked it anyway. Some bits are a bit unrealistic, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see what you guys think. You probably fucking hate it. Okay, we're going to start bringing the podcast to an end then. So quick cheeky plug of James's Racing League. What's it called, James?
Forever Relentless Racing. If you want to search for it, just you can either type that or an easy one. You can just type in on YouTube FRR Project Cars, and it'll bring up my league. It should be in blue and white, the logo. And yeah, just subscribe on there. But we're currently, I should have the final race of season 4 uploaded, and throughout this podcast earlier on, when I was zoning out,
yeah,
I was in the middle of getting my footage for that. So yeah, that should be up sometime later on this week. We're having a 2 to 3 week break, and then we're going to be starting season 5. It's going to be with Indy cars, and I've got a couple of positions open, so I'm still waiting on Dave to see if he fancies driving or not. But I've got to say, it's a very, very enjoyable car to drive when you're practicing online. But yeah, I tried. You can either do an online practice, or you can do a single-player race and set it all up. I did single-player race, and the tyres didn't grip the surface of the tarmac.
Oh.
Felt like I was sliding through every corner. But yet when I did an online race, they were grippy as all. So I were a bit like, oh, weird. So.
Interesting. Well, I'll find out. I'll either have a drive in it tonight or tomorrow, and I'll let you know. Are we going to see the return of Nigel Bolt, Paul?
I think, yeah, definitely. We definitely.
By all means. Yeah.
Where's he been for the last few races?
Well, there was 1 week where I think I was poorly, and then there was another week when I was on holiday, and then I can't remember, and then it just went from there. Really, it was just a downhill spiral, really.
And and then one race we started doing the commentary.
Yes, that was it.
And then my computer completely froze, and then restarted it, and all this commentary was deleted.
Because that was going to be the return of Nigel, wasn't it? After a couple of weeks off, and he was going to say where he'd been and explain where he'd been, and he's.
So then, but in a way, we're a kind of blessing in disguise, because then we started the movie review thing. Because I said, well, I don't want it to be a wasted night. Let's watch a movie and chat about it. So anyway, a blessing in disguise. But yeah, he's definitely going to be back for a bit of commentary.
Okay, important question then, Paul. What did you think when James told you that he'd killed off Justin?
Oh man. I had to go to the disabled toilet and have a cry to myself. Yeah, it was shocking, but I mean, it adds a bit of story, a bit of layer into the thing, and I'm happy to go with it and see where everything takes us. Yeah, for the future. I mean, we still. I mean, I'm assuming James, as a creator, is still to introduce Justin's hardcore Cockney brother at some point. And what was his name again, James? I forget now.
Somewhat leather. Well, it's obviously leathers.
Wasn't it like ripping leathers or
arson leathers?
Arson leathers. That was it.
I know that was one of the many names that I mentioned.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what happens there, for definite. I'm guessing James, as well as made you aware, or you were aware of the word challenge we've been playing on James recently regarding his commentaries.
Oh yes.
Yes. I'm pretty sure that Steve gave him one for the next video, but I can't remember if he did.
Well, I tell you what, I won't remember that. The last thing before we go right now, both of you just come up with a phrase or something I have to get in. Because I'm probably going to do the commentary tomorrow.
Ooh.
I'll tell you what, James. Shall we make it? Shall we try and fit? I mean, you can do one for the race by all means. Shall we try and get one into a film commentary?
Yeah. Do it with both, to be fair. So yeah, what do you think? Because the last one, which I thought was fucking brilliant, were
diagnosed with a moustache.
yeah. We were saying he's driving so much like Nigel Mansell. He's been diagnosed with a moustache.
Yeah. That was good. I was absolutely gutted I wasn't able to clip that for last week's podcast, but I really wasn't on it last week. But yeah, I did like how you managed to get that in there, and the fact that it came from the graffiti video that I watched. But I'm trying to think of. I've thought of a word.
I'll tell you something I'm going to get in. It's definitely going to be shell. I'm going to have to get shell in somewhere.
Oh, God.
Oh, and Heineken.
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 We see, I was thinking of a long word, right? And unparalleled came to mind. Then I thought, no, that's not long enough, and it wouldn't work for James and the characters that James has used. So how about this? Unparallelistic.
Whoa.
Right.
See, because he's struggling to say it, right? So that's why I think unparallelistic.
And what does it mean, Dave?
It's kind of like. It's kind
Is
of like
incomparable to.
It's kind of like that, yeah. It's like you can't compare it. It's unparallelable. You can't. So, for example, Shell is unparallelistic to Heineken.
You're right. Okay. Right. Paul. Paul, before I leave work tomorrow, remind me what the word is.
I will.
Right. Unparallelistic. Right.
Unparallelistic. And it's not someone who comes with a limp or in a wheelchair. It's not that kind of parallelistic.
It's not gonna.
He's
Yeah, although actually, I mean, taking no offence to anybody, you could accidentally use it in that way.
You could.
He's so
He's walking
unparallelistic.
towards
He
me,
would
absolutely fine. He's unparallelistic.
Yeah. Or you could say he's so unparallelistic. He's been drinking Shell, not Heineken.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Describing
Okay,
that would be describing Steve on holiday. That will. He's so unparallelistic. Oh dear. Right. Oh. Okay.
Right,
Well, I think it's about time we bring this evening's podcast to an end now. I will admit, obviously, Paul stayed with us an hour and 35 minutes longer than he was expecting to. So, Paul, what I will say is thank you very much for joining us. It's been great having you with us today, even as somebody new and what have you to Formula One. And what I will say is, for anybody regarding anything in your life, if what you're thinking of asking, you're thinking about not asking because you think it might be a stupid question, don't hesitate, just ask it, because chances are other people want to ask it as well, but they're too afraid to do so. It's a little bit like if you see a beautiful woman but you're too afraid to ask her out, you'll never know if she would have said yes. Okay, you might get punched in the face, but it's a risk worth taking.
Dave, is it safe to drink shampoo?
No.
I'm just asking. It's a question.
Oh right, I wonder why you was asking that. Stupid fucking question, isn't it? Well, you know what? It's not safe to drink shampoo, and if you want to know why, just watch the film Evolution. They definitely don't drink Head and Shoulders anyway. If you've seen Evolution, you'll get that. If you haven't, you'll have no idea what I'm going on about. But there we go. That's a film you don't really want to watch, but actually it's kind of stupidly funny. But there we go. Totally lost train of thought. So yeah, anyway, Paul, thank you very much for joining us on this evening's podcast. Also, keep up the good work as Nigel Bolt, and good luck with Justin Levers' brother. And if anyone wants to know what it is that Paul's been getting up to, check out James's Racing League. There is a link in the description. Paul has done some of the commentary on James's Racing League races this season, and it's absolutely fucking brilliant, especially when Nigel Bolt says, yeah, the drivers should know where they're fucking going by now. It goes left and right and left and right. it's not the fucking art, but there we go. Oh, actually, right, okay. I do have a phrase for you, Paul, that you need to get in as Nigel Bolt, and Steve will love this one, right? So a phrase that you have to say as Nigel Bolt at some point is, "It's the sweetie man coming." Oh no, sorry, it's the sweetie man here.
It's the sweetie man here.
It's the sweetie man here, and that is from the film District 9. If you've never seen District 9, guys, fucking what? Actually, yeah, you two need to review District 9.
I've watched it once when it was in the cinemas. When was it? 2009?
About that, yeah.
I just remember them looking like lobster men.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. They do kind of look a bit like. It's a fucking brilliant film. Watch that, review it. It's fucking amazing, and also it's the sweetie man is in there as well. So that's your phrase to get into your one of your next commentaries. James, obviously been a good show tonight, I think. Thank you for joining us as usual. As I'm sure Steve is sipping fucking beer somewhere in Spain. But yeah, and hope.
Where's he gone?
Somewhere in Spain.
I'm so glad that while Steve was on holiday, they got somebody in with so much more knowledge and expertise in the subject. And
I know. The thing is,
don't put yourself down, Paul.
No.
I told you.
Yeah, let other people do that for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, no.
Can I? Sorry, just a quick. Can I give a quick shout out? Actually.
Yeah, of course you can.
Yeah. I've had a message off my neighbour Tom Inman. He's really into his F1. He's a cool guy. His wife Amanda Inman, and they've got the new baby Vala. So yeah, shout out to them.
Well,
nice one.
Hello and
get
congratulations.
him to subscribe.
Yeah.
I will. Oh, he definitely will. Yeah, he wants the link to this one after we've done. So.
Oh,
See if
get
he
that.
enjoys
We've got a new subscriber, Dave. Get rubbing your hand. YouTube money will be on its way.
Yeah, in another 1,097 subscribers, or 10,000 or 9,000. Drew has just asked, "Is that how Paul looks?" No, and Paul's
Judging
thinking,
off which picture.
Paul's thinking, what the fuck are you on about? Well, James and Paul might not know this, but what I've basically done is I've taken Nigel Bolt's picture, put it over Steve's face on the podcast picture, crossed out Steve's name and written Paul. So no, Drew, Paul doesn't look like that. That's the character he plays when doing commentary on James's broadcast.
What I said, Nigel is in the house.
Yeah, there you go. But so yeah. Well,
Nigel, what have you been up to? Why have you been away, Nigel?
Oh well, apart from filling my pants with shit, and for about 3-4 weeks, pretty much nothing apart from wanking myself silly.
Is that why you haven't got 2 front teeth? Can you reach yourself?
Oh yes, my cum shot is that strong. It blew my front teeth out.
Do you understand why it's so hard to do the commentary without laughing your head off?
Yeah, I can. You know what you really should do? You know, any bits that you record and you laugh and stuff like that, save them, right? And at the end of the season, you do a commentary outtakes.
A blooper reel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Anyway, congratulations to Paul's next door neighbour on their new baby. Good luck with that. And just think, when the F1 is on its night races, you can just take the night duty. Hopefully, if Lucas has been watching or listening to this evening's podcast, he's been able to see what we're more usually about. To be fair, we do usually go on more of a tangent in different areas, but we're trying to keep things a little more F1 the time we have a non-F1 expert on the show. But hopefully Lucas has enjoyed it a bit more this week, and our new ideas that Steve came up with we will try and introduce next week. But what I will say is, James, Steve did say to me he lands next Tuesday, so by the time he's landed he will not have seen the race yet. So whether he'll have had a chance to watch the race or not, I don't know. Maybe what we'll be able to do is get him to watch the race while we're on the podcast.
Yeah, we'll be like, what's going on now?
Yeah, what's happening, Steve? And he'll be like, I don't know, I'm falling asleep. So Steve should hopefully be back with us next Tuesday. Whether he'll have any information or not, I do not know. Anyway, I think that's about it. So everybody, make sure you like, subscribe, share, tell your mates. We'll be back on again next Tuesday at 8 PM for a review of the Hungarian Grand Prix, and to see how Steve, James and I got on with our predictions, and whether Paul was correct with the pink one will crash, and the
Hungary Games.
Yeah, the Hungary Games. He's on the ball. He might not know F1, but he does know funny, that's for certain. Anyway, so yeah, make sure you like, subscribe, come join us next week. James, Paul, thank you again for joining us, and to the listeners, thanks again for listening. Have a good one. Enjoy your week. Enjoy the sun. We're meant to be hotter than Jamaica this week in the UK, so let's see if that's going to pan out. So thank you very much, and see you all later.
Yeah, bye. Blah 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 blah.